I risked my life to save my drowning fiancé, Su Yifan, because we had physical contact in the water. Su Yifan, who had planned to break off the engagement, had no choice but to marry me. I served him for 30 years and even bore him a healthy, intelligent son, yet, Su Yifan never loved me. He always believed my rescue was just a scheme to marry him, so, after his beloved white Moonlight died, Su Yifan resolutely chose to end his own life to follow her in death. My son believes it was my refusal to step aside that doomed Su Yifan to a life of misery, and he sought revenge on me for it. He poured my fast-acting heart pills down the drain and left me to die in agony. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the day Su Yifan fell into the water. This time, I didn't save him. Instead, I sought out the son of my father's comrade in arms. You promised my father you'd look after me for the rest of my life. Does that promise still stand? Someone get in there and save Yifan, quick. This is a matter of life and death. That's right, Yifan can't swim. My mind was in a complete fog, utterly clueless about what was happening. I just felt myself being pushed and jostled forward by the crowd. It wasn't until a blast of icy wind hit me that I snapped to my senses. I found myself standing by the riverbank, stripping off my padded jacket, about to plunge into the freezing winter river to save Su Yifan. Taking in the propaganda slogans on the roadside and the way everyone was dressed, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been reborn. I had gone back in time, 30 years back, to the very day I saved Su Yifan. In my past life, I jumped into the icy river to save him, nearly drowning myself before I managed to pull him ashore. Once we were on the bank, the onlookers started jeering, calling it a beauty rescues the hero scene. They gossiped about us embracing in the water, calling it scandalous. To protect our reputations, and since Su Yifan and I were already betrothed, the Su family quickly came to propose the marriage formally. After we married, I discovered the truth. Su Yifan never liked me. He had actually planned to discuss calling off our engagement in a few days. He had even fallen into the river in the first place while trying to catch fish for his beloved, his white Moonlight. Dangsini. When I found out, I cried and made a scene, but in the end, I convinced myself that love could grow over time. I believed Su Yifan would eventually come to truly love me. I took care of his daily needs, served his parents-in-law for him, and even bore him a clever son. But his act of dying for love was a devastating blow. It made me realize that the past 30 years of my life were nothing but a joke in Su Yifan's eyes. Only in death did I understand that a person's heart can be warmed, but a block of ice never can. If you try to force warmth upon it, you'll only end up freezing yourself. With that thought, I fastened my thick cotton coat again. Just as I was about to leave, I saw Su Yifan, who should have been unconscious, suddenly jolt awake and swim to shore with remarkably skilled strokes. I couldn't help but frown. In our past life, Su Yifan couldn't swim at all at this time. He only learned how to swim after he married me. Before I could think it through, Su Yifan had already climbed ashore, seeing me staring at him. He walked over shivering, his face alight with excitement. Did you really think I'd give you another chance to pin this on me? I practiced swimming for years. Heaven has finally opened its eyes and given me a chance to save myself. It dawned on me, so I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. Hearing this, I let out a cold laugh. Didn't you see I was about to leave? If you hadn't stopped me, I'd be home by now. Only then did Su Yifan realize I was still bundled up in my padded jacket. With no intention of getting into the water, his face fell, and he clearly wanted to argue further, but a gust of icy wind hit him, making him shiver violently. Flustered and furious, yet speaking as if he were in the right, he demanded, "Take off your jacket, can't you see I'm freezing to death?" I gave a cold snort and addressed the onlookers. Is there any kind soul willing to lend Su Yifan a jacket to ward off the cold? He's trying to force a young woman to undress in public, and I'm simply too embarrassed. The crowd naturally burst into laughter, everyone chattering at once, calling Su Yifan shameless and the like. Su Yifan was a university student and a teacher, his life having been smooth sailing until then, never subjected to public ridicule. He frowned briefly but quickly plastered on a smile. I nearly drowned just now, and my fiancé stood by and did nothing to save me. A woman like that is not worth marrying, so, I ask you all to bear witness. I am breaking off my engagement to Qin Yutong. From now on, we go our separate ways, free to marry whomever we please. As soon as those words were spoken, everyone couldn't help but find it odd, and they all started whispering among themselves. Yifan just fell into the water. Yutong, why didn't you jump in to help? I thought you were a strong swimmer. Yeah, I even saw you starting to take your clothes off to get in the water." His own fiancé just stood by and watched. I'd be heartbroken too if I were him. I certainly don't want to start my new life with a bad reputation, so I remained perfectly calm. I turned to Su Yifan and said, "Su Yifan, what on earth are you talking about? You want me to jump in and save you, but you can obviously swim, and you're quite good at it. What would be the point of me going in?" Hearing this, Su Yifan felt a bit awkward, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. Regardless, Qin Yutong watched me fall into the water and did nothing. I could never marry a woman like that. I must call off the engagement. At first, everyone thought Su Yifan was just saying he'd call off the engagement in the heat of the moment. After all, he could swim perfectly well and was completely unharmed. There was no real need to go as far as breaking off the betrothal, so when he said it, even those who had been supporting him moments before felt it was inappropriate. "Yifan, you managed to get out of the water on your own. How can you accuse Yutong of standing by and doing nothing? Could it be that you've been wanting to call off the engagement all along and are just using this as an excuse? Besides, Yutong is a young woman, she can't go into the water on such a freezing day, she'll get sick." Hearing those words about getting sick, my nose tingled with emotion. In my past life, it was because I jumped into the icy winter water to save Su Yifan that my once robust health was ruined. Every month, my period would leave me writhing in agony, and it even severely impacted my fertility. After all I'd done for him, Su Yifan still insists that I orchestrated his fall into the water. He believes I deliberately timed my rescue and used the incident to force him into marrying me. Recalling everything that had happened, I nodded immediately. Fine, the engagement is off. Let everyone here bear witness. It was Su Yifan who refused to honor our betrothal and marry me today, not I who changed my heart. With that, I turned and left the riverbank without a moment's hesitation. I ran all the way home. My mother must have heard about what happened by the river, for she was already standing at the doorway, leaning on her cane with a face full of concern. Seeing her like that, my heart ached, and I couldn't help but call out "Mom" in a choked, tearful voice. My mother is blind, so her hearing is exceptionally sharp. She immediately detected that I was crying. "Tong Tong, don't cry. Take me to the Su family. I'll have a good talk with Yifan. I'll make sure the engagement stays on." "No, I don't want to marry Su Yifan anymore. He doesn't like me at all. I won't be happy if I marry him." I helped my mother to the living room and had her sit down on a chair. My mother sighed, "But if you don't marry Yifan, you'll be sent down to the countryside." Sigh. "In the end, it was me who held you back. In my past life, Su Yifan and I were a miserable couple." My mother worried endlessly about our situation, and even on her deathbed, she said, "It's all my fault. I held you back. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have had to marry Su Yifan." She said that because if I hadn't married Su Yifan, I would have been sent down to the countryside. Actually, I shouldn't have had to go, but after my father passed, my uncle seized our family's factory job quota, forcing me into the countryside. My mother felt she had failed to protect me and that she had become a burden, which made her deeply sad ever since. Su Yifan is a teacher. Marrying him would grant me a special exemption from the rural assignment. That's precisely why he believes I'm marrying him, not out of love, but to avoid being sent down to the countryside. It's not that I'm afraid of the assignment itself, but my mother is in poor health and blind. If I leave, my father's relatives would likely hound her to death. The thought of it makes me uneasy. I'm torn with anxiety, caught between my mother and the prospect of reliving the hardships of the past 30 years. Just as I was at a loss, the sound of a cough and water being poured came from outside the door. My eyes lit up the moment I saw who it was. That's it, of course, there's him. The man who arrived was Wei Jiahui, the son of my father's comrade in arms. My father had saved Wei's father on the battlefield and, after both of Wei's parents passed away, provided repeated support to Wei Jiahui. When my father passed away, Wei Jiahui knelt before him, kowtowed heavily several times, and said, "Uncle Qin, you can rest in peace. I will take care of Sister Yutong and Auntie for the rest of my life." At the time, I thought he was just saying it casually, but to my surprise, he truly began looking after my mother and me, even remaining unmarried his entire life. In my previous life, if it hadn't been for the backing of this sworn brother, a specially skilled technician, I would likely have been thrown out by the now successful Su Yifan long ago. Moreover, Wei Jiahui is a specially skilled technician. If I married him, I could still stay and get a factory job, avoiding being sent down to the countryside. With that thought, I hurried out to the courtyard. But Wei Jiahui had already filled the water vat and quietly left. I didn't chase after him. Instead, I turned and headed out to the pharmacy. I grabbed a few packets of medicine for coughs and chills and stepped out of the shop, running right into Su Yifan. He saw the medicine in my hand and snorted coldly. "Weren't you so bold talking about calling off the engagement just now? What's the meaning of buying me this medicine?" It seemed Su Yifan thought I'd bought the medicine for him. I couldn't be bothered with him. Clutching the medicine, I turned to leave, but Su Yifan suddenly reached out and grabbed my arm. "Come to my house later. Cindy is waiting for me there now, and I don't want you bullying her again." "Fine, I'll take the medicine, but only because it's the least you could do. If you hadn't kept your coat to yourself, I wouldn't have caught this cold in the first place." I really wanted to give Su Yifan a piece of my mind, but I knew him all too well. The more I said, the more he'd think I was just making excuses, so I just shot him a glare, shook off his hand, and walked away. I went home, carefully brewed the medicine, and then went to knock on Wei Jiehui's door. Wei Jiehui opened the door after a few coughs. "Yutong, what brings you here? Is everything alright at home? Hang on, let me grab my jacket and I'll be right with you." I shook my head and handed him the medicine. "I heard you coughing yesterday when you brought the water. You're young, but you still need to be careful. You don't want to end up with a lung condition." As I said this, my face flushed a little. Wei Jiehui was completely stunned, unsure for a moment whether to take the medicine, say thank you, or invite me inside. Without overthinking it, I got straight to the point. "When my father passed away, you promised you'd look after me for the rest of my life. Does that promise still stand?" Wei Jiehui nodded without a second thought. "Of course it does." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Alright, if you're going to take care of me for the rest of my life, then you should marry me. Otherwise, how are you going to keep looking after me once you get married?" Even though Wei Jiehui never married in his past life and was always incredibly good to me, I couldn't be sure that I was the reason he stayed single, nor could I be certain he would actually marry me, so I was still a little worried after saying it, but Wei Jiehui didn't hesitate at all. He took the medicine from my hands and drank it in one go. "Alright, whatever you say. When do we get married? I certainly hope we can do this as soon as possible. Who knows what other trouble Su Yifan might stir up." So I spoke up immediately. "Let's go get the marriage license right now." Wei Jiehui stared at me for a moment. I could tell he had something he wanted to ask, but in the end, he said nothing. He simply went and fetched his ID card from inside the house. "Alright, let's go now." And just like that, Wei Jiehui and I quickly obtained our marriage certificate. Since he didn't have many relatives left on his side, and I was on bad terms with most of my family, we didn't hold a wedding banquet right away. Instead, we first arranged a time to go to the factory to complete the employment paperwork. After all, if the spot is gone by then, I'll have gotten married for nothing. Just as the paperwork was halfway done, a commotion erupted outside. Moments later, Su Yifan barged into the office with Deng Sini, pushed the door open, grabbed the factory director's hand, and shouted, "Director, you can't process her entry into the factory." The director was startled. Before he could say a word, Su Yifan strode up to me, practically pointing his finger in my face, and said, "Qin Yutong, have you no shame? I've made myself perfectly clear. I'm breaking off the engagement. There's nothing between us anymore. How dare you steal the factory entry spot meant for my future wife?" The factory director stood up. "Yifan, please, just hear me out first." Su Yifan, of course, was in no mood to listen. "Director, I know you think Qin Yutong's family situation makes her unsuitable for the rural assignment, but her unwillingness to go is her own problem. She shouldn't have taken my wife's factory placement spot. I'm an innocent party in all this too. I can't just throw my whole life away for the sake of someone who means nothing to me. I find it laughable. Someone who means nothing, after I've looked after him for 30 whole years. In the end, I'm just someone who means nothing." I let out a sigh and was just about to explain when the factory director spoke first. "Yifan, calm down. Qin Yutong's position at the factory has nothing to do with you. She got the job because her husband is a specially required technician here. It's completely in line with our preferential policy." Su Yifan was stunned. "What husband? What specially required technician? How could she possibly be married to someone else?" Only after saying this did Su Yifan belatedly notice the other man standing beside me. His gaze slowly drifted downward, and it wasn't until he saw my hand tightly clasped with Wei Jiehui's that the truth finally dawned on him. Impossible. Qin Yutong would never marry anyone but me. Her heart belongs to me alone. She loves only me. She would even die for me. How could she possibly marry someone else? This is definitely a sham marriage she's arranged just to get into the factory. Don't forget, Wei Jiahui is nothing but a lapdog for the Qin family. If you help her get processed into the factory, you're accomplices, exploiting a loophole in the policy. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen Su Yifan in such a frenzied state. He wasn't even this worked up when Deng Xini got married in our previous life. I'm a bit confused. What's he getting so worked up about? Whether I join the factory or not has nothing to do with him. In fact, if I do join, it would guarantee I'd stop bothering him in the future. So why is he doing this? I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't want to waste time guessing. I just turned to Wei Jiahui and said, "Honey, show him our marriage certificate." Wei Jiahui grunted an agreement and smoothly produced our marriage certificate. The prominent official seal on it proved that Wei Jiahui and I were indeed legally married at that moment. My entry into the factory was fully compliant with procedures and policies, leaving no room for objection. I thought showing him the marriage certificate would make Su Yifan leave, but when he saw it, he completely lost it. So what if the marriage certificate is real? He snapped. Qin Yutong only married you to avoid being sent down to the countryside. You two are not a real couple. Qin Yutong's heart belongs only to me. She married you just to use you. You've been fooled, completely taken in by this woman. You have no idea how black her heart truly is. I was so furious I could have rushed over and torn Su Yifan's mouth right off his face, but Deng Xini beside him was quicker than me. She tugged at Su Yifan's sleeve. "Yifan, don't say things like that. You'll cause trouble between Yutong and Jiahui." Su Yifan roughly shook off Deng Xini's hand. "Shut up. You have no idea what's going on. Qin Yutong can't marry anyone else. She's my wife." This was the first time Deng Xini had been pushed away by Su Yifan, humiliated. Her expression changed as she said, "Just because Yutong was desperate to marry you back then doesn't mean she can't change her mind. Besides, she only wanted to marry you to get into the factory. She'd marry anyone for the same reason. The only one to be pitted is poor Jiahui." Hearing this, Su Yifan rushed over to Wei Jiahui again. "She deliberately jumped into the river to save me just to force me into marrying her." "How did she force you? Did she strip naked and cling to you too? Demanding you take responsibility? You're talking nonsense." Before I could finish, Wei Jiahui punched Su Yifan. "I married Yutong because I love her. I was the one who begged her to marry me. It was nothing like what you're saying. If you dare spout another word of that crap, a single punch will be the least of your worries." Su Yifan's face was a mask of disbelief as he muttered to himself, "Impossible. How could she marry someone else?" Wei Jiahui couldn't be bothered with him. Instead, he took my hand and asked the factory director, "Sir, if the paperwork isn't ready, I'll come back another time. I don't want my wife getting upset over something like this." The factory manager, eager to downplay the whole affair, quickly said, "Just sign here and you're free to go. Everything's been taken care of." The whole thing blew up. Everyone found out about my impending marriage to Wei Jiahui, and they also learned that Su Yifan had a complete meltdown upon hearing the news. Gossip about it spread through every street and alley. What started as a tale of two men vying for one woman slowly morphed into a story about me two-timing them and being an unfaithful woman. To change the public narrative, Wei Jiahui dipped into his savings to throw a lavish wedding banquet. There, he looked at me with deep affection and said, "A desirable daughter attracts suitors from 100 families. The truth is, I've always been in love with Yutong. But she's a woman of unwavering loyalty. Since she was betrothed to Su Yifan, she never once looked my way. Fortunately, fate finally smiled on me, and I got to see their engagement called off. The moment it was dissolved, I went straight to her family to ask for her hand. A wife like that, if I'd hesitated for even a second, someone else would have snatched her up." With Wei Jiahui's statement out there, people naturally stopped finding fault with me. Instead, they started mocking Su Yifan for not being able to let go gracefully, saying he wasn't much of a man. After we married, my mother and I moved into Wei Jiahui's house. He treated me incredibly well. On our wedding night, he even offered to sleep on the floor. In the end, I had to practically drag him into bed. It wasn't long before we became a real married couple. It was only then that I realized a marriage could be so blissfully happy, but the better he treated me, the more guilty I felt. My conscience got the better of me, and I went to him to confess everything. But Wei Jiahui just shook his head and said, "You don't need to explain anything. No matter why you married me, I'm just happy you did." Hearing that, I was at a loss for words. All I could think was that I would spend the rest of my life slowly proving my love for him. While things were going swimmingly for me, Su Yifan was having a rough time. We only found out through the neighbors. It turns out that Su Yifan had been drinking at the wedding banquet that day. On his way home, he fell off his bicycle. Too embarrassed to go to the hospital, he only went when the pain became unbearable, and that's when he found out he had a fracture. Because so much time had passed, the broken bone had already started to heal on its own. Now he needs to have it rebroken and reset, which is both agonizing and time-consuming. As soon as this happened, everyone started thinking of me as the femme fatale again. To be fair, they're not entirely wrong. One way or another, this whole mess is connected to me and Wei Jiahui. If he hadn't come to our wedding, and if he weren't so afraid of being laughed at, he wouldn't have suffered like this. But honestly, I think he had it coming. Wei Jiahui, however, didn't see it that way. He bought some fruit and brought it home, saying, "He did fall after drinking at our place. After all, we should go see him." I refused without a second thought. There's already enough gossip going around. If I go, it'll only make things look worse. Whether he broke his leg or his neck, it has nothing to do with me. Besides, I've told you, I'm going to be your wife. I have absolutely no connection to Su Yifan anymore. Wei Jiahui nodded repeatedly. I know, but if we don't go, people will just think we have a guilty conscience. That's why I'll go with you. If we visit openly and without hesitation, it'll show everyone we have nothing to hide. Even though I didn't want to go, I ended up agreeing with Wei Jiahui. He had a point. Some things really needed to be said clearly. Once everything was out in the open, we could go our separate ways and be done with it for good. When I arrived at the Su residence, Wei Jiahui was waiting for me at the door. He told me to go in and check on Su Yifan. Just as I was about to knock, I heard the voices of Su Yifan and Deng Xini coming from inside. I couldn't decide whether to knock and enter or to leave first. In my past life, I would often stumble upon Su Yifan and Deng Xini alone together. Every time, I would get jealous, burst in, and make everyone uncomfortable. I initially wanted to leave, but then I thought that if I did, I'd just have to come back another time. While I was hesitating, the voices inside grew louder. Su Yifan's voice sounded weak, yet resolute. "Xini, now that my engagement to Qin Yutong is off and she's married, shouldn't we start planning our own wedding?" Deng Xini let out a derisive snort. "You don't actually think that just because you're not marrying Qin Yutong, I'd marry you instead, do you?" Su Yifan was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Xini, what are you trying to say? What do you mean?" "What am I trying to say? I've just been using you as free labor. Take a look at your own family's situation. Why on earth would I marry someone like you? Let me be perfectly clear with you. I'm about to marry the factory director's son. The reason I came here today was to tell you to stop bothering me for good. The only person who has ever truly loved you is Qin Yutong." Su Yifan was on the verge of a breakdown. "That can't be true. You told me yourself that Qin Yutong only married me to get into the factory. And that she was even the one who pushed me into the water." My heart sank. So that's why Su Yifan was so convinced I deliberately set her up in our past life. It was Deng Xini who told her that. Deng Xini scoffed. "What nonsense are you spouting? When did I ever say that? Besides, what does you falling into the water have to do with Qin Yutong? Are you suggesting she pushed you?" After hearing this, Su Yifan started muttering to herself again. Deng Xini, probably finding it tedious, stood up and opened the door, only to see me standing there holding fruit. She smiled into the room and said, "Qin Yutong is here. My advice, stop dreaming the impossible. Holding on to Qin Yutong is what you should be focusing on right now." I walked into the room awkwardly. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I just came to see you. And also, before I could finish, Su Yifan suddenly looked up, his eyes rimmed red. "I'm sorry, Yutong. I've wronged you." My nose stung a little. I had waited 30 years for this apology, but now, I truly didn't need it anymore. Seeing my silence, Su Yifan sighed and continued, "You've been reborn too, haven't you? Actually, I already knew even if you didn't say it. In our past life, you jumped in to save me without a moment's hesitation. This time, you just turned and walked away. I thought you were playing hard to get, but now I realize, your heart must have grown cold toward me, right?" I gave a non-committal hum but didn't elaborate. After all, he's no longer a 20-year-old kid. He understands the fickleness of human relationships better than anyone, so he knows, in this life or the last, I'm the only one who's ever truly cared for him. As for Deng Xini, she's always just seen him as a simp. Su Yifan sighed, his voice heavy with world weariness. "And you have every right to be heartbroken. You saved me, yet I insisted you were just trying to hold a favor over my head. I never gave you a kind look our whole lives, even badmouthed you to our son. turning him against you. You must have suffered so much. You must really want to hit me, curse me, hate me, right? I don't know what to say. Curse him. There doesn't seem to be much to curse him for. After all, in my past life, I was the one who stubbornly insisted on marrying him. Hate him. We've both had a second chance at life. What's done is done. I'm newly married now, incredibly happy with Wei Jiahui. And I just can't find it in me to hate anyone or anything, so I cut Su Yifan off. It's all in the past, I've let it go, and you should too. I put the fruit down and tried to leave, but Su Yifan suddenly grabbed my hand. Yutong, I know I was wrong now. They say it's never too late to mend your ways. Can you forgive me? I was startled and stumbled back. Su Yifan, have you lost your mind? I'm married now. And I'm very happy in my marriage. I love my husband dearly. Su Yifan didn't expect me to shake off his hand. After all, in my past life, I loved him so much, always wanting to be glued to his side, but he always found me annoying, so much so that I could only hold his hand in the middle of the night when he was asleep. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed. Yutong, don't I know you? You were so good to me, willing to do anything for me, even if I hurt you 10,000 times. You'd never leave. You only married Wei Jiahui to get a factory job and avoid being sent to the countryside. I don't blame you for that. But if you keep playing hard to get like this, it's just not fun anymore. You can go back right now and divorce Wei Jiahui. After you're divorced, I can still marry you. That way, everyone will know you only got married to spite me. And that you still love me in your heart. I really did overestimate Su Yifan. I thought he was genuinely remorseful. But now I see he's only sorry because he's got no one else right now. Su Yifan, my husband is right outside the door. I didn't want to come see you. My husband suggested I come. Do you know why? Su Yifan was taken aback. Isn't it because your marriage is a sham? I shook my head. No. It's because we're truly in love. He trusts me, and I will be loyal to him. As for you, Deng Sini didn't want you. What makes you think I would? With that, I didn't give Su Yifan a chance to reply and hurried away. The next 6 months flew by. My relationship with Wei Jiahui grew more stable, and my mother's health continued to improve. Deng Sini's wedding to the factory director's son went ahead as scheduled. However, on the wedding day, Su Yifan suddenly showed up and flung several fish into Deng Sini's face, saying, Sini, didn't you say you wanted to eat fish I caught myself? Well, here you go. Deng Sini was absolutely livid, but Su Yifan wasn't satisfied. He actually snatched the MC's microphone and said to the groom, Hey, groom, did you know your wife is quite the player? The slang was too modern for the groom to understand, but the mocking tone in Su Yifan's voice was unmistakable. What exactly are you trying to say? He demanded. Su Yifan laid out all the details of his history with Deng Sini over the years, even giving a vivid description of a mole on her backside. I don't know if Su Yifan and Deng Sini had already been intimate at that point or if it happened years later. Regardless, the grand wedding descended into a complete farce. The groom's family stormed out in a fury, and the very next day, he dragged Deng Sini off to get a divorce. Deng Sini's reputation was utterly ruined, with no other options left. She had to go to Su Yifan and beg him to marry her. However, Su Yifan merely humiliated her before turning her down. As a result, Deng Sini was forced into a hasty marriage with a man of poor circumstances, over 20 years her senior and already divorced. Her entire family ended up moving away from the area. After this incident, Su Yifan's parents began arranging blind dates for him. Scandal never seems to tarnish a man's prospects, and given Su Yifan's excellent standing, it wasn't long, after just a few meetings, before I heard he was on the verge of getting married himself. But then, one night as I was walking home from work, Su Yifan suddenly appeared in front of me and blocked my path. I frowned warily at Su Yifan. What are you trying to do? Su Yifan produced a ring from his breast pocket as if by magic. This is the ring my mother gave me. I should have given it to you in our past life, but I gave it to Deng Sini instead, this time. I won't give it to anyone else. Yutong, stop pretending. I know you still love me. After our last talk, I was truly disheartened, but then I found out you fainted right on the factory floor after hearing about my blind date. That proves you still have feelings for me. So that's what this is about. I rolled my eyes internally and placed a hand on my lower abdomen. You've got it all wrong. I didn't faint because of you. I fainted because I'm pregnant and haven't been getting enough rest from working the night shift. Su Yifan's face instantly turned ashen. That's impossible. How could you possibly be with Wei Jiahui for real? He forced you, didn't he? Are you out of your mind? Wei Jiahui and I are legally married. Why on earth would he need to force me? Su Yifan's hand holding the ring trembled uncontrollably. But you loved me so much. And now I finally understand my own heart. The reason we were reborn was to give me a second chance from the heavens, a chance to see Dangsani for who she really is, and to see you clearly. We are meant to be. I sighed. Su Yifan, the heavens gave us a chance to start over. Not just you saw through Dangsani, and in the same way, I have seen through you. There is absolutely no possibility for us. Su Yifan shook his head vehemently. How can I possibly let it go when I love you this much right now? His words made me cringe. Let it go. I'm about to start showing, and you still haven't let it go. Hearing me bring up the pregnancy again, Su Yifan's eyes lit up. I get it now. You want me to go through the whole chasing my wife to the crematorium trope, don't you? There's no way you're pregnant now. Your health is terrible. How could you possibly be pregnant after just 6 months? Su Yifan wasn't wrong. In my past life, I struggled to conceive. I took so much medicine and spent years before finally getting the good news, but that was my past life. I sighed. The reason I had trouble getting pregnant in my past life was because I injured my body saving you from the river. It wasn't that I was inherently infertile. You're a teacher. You should have some common sense. Don't you know that girls shouldn't get chilled? It causes uterine coldness and affects fertility. Su Yifan seemed to remember. I was always in perfect health and never had period cramps, but after getting married, I started getting them all the time. I told him over and over that it was because I was feeling the cold, but Su Yifan always said I was being dramatic, that I was emotionally blackmailing him. It never once crossed his mind to make me a cup of brown sugar water or get me a heating pad, let alone consider that what I was saying might actually be true. Su Yifan's face darkened even further. Don't you want me anymore? Don't you want our son? I don't care that you're pregnant. I can treat your child as my own. I cut him off impatiently. Son, that's not my son. He's your son. In my past life, he was the death of me, literally drove me to my grave. A son like that, I want no part of him. Su Yifan was already dead at the time, so naturally, he had no idea what his ungrateful son had done, but after all, it was his own son, cut from the same cloth. So he quickly believed me and knew I was telling the truth. He was at a loss for words, yet unwilling to part ways with me completely. In a final, desperate attempt, he argued, you got pregnant and had a child for Wei Jiahui, but he didn't even come to pick you up from work. What kind of treating you well is that? I pointed into the distance. He just went to buy me some wonton soup. You might not believe it, but I have to tell you, Wei Jiahui and I have a genuinely good relationship. The heavens gave me a second chance, probably just so I wouldn't miss out on him again. With that, I was done. Without so much as a glance at Su Yifan, I walked slowly towards Wei Jiahui. Wei Jiahui looked more nervous than I'd ever seen him. Only after I pressed him did he finally speak. I bought it a long time ago. I saw him propose to you. I was so afraid you'd say yes. I smiled and patted his head. Even if you said yes, I wouldn't have. Wei Jiahui looked at me, as if he finally believed I wouldn't leave him, even though Su Yifan and I had cleared the air. In the days that followed, he still insisted on accompanying me to and from work every day. I told him several times that there was no chance for us anymore, but he just smiled and said, I know I'm not good enough for you. It's just, I remembered that in your last life, when you were pregnant, you were once mugged. I failed to protect you then. This time, I want to do it right. Even after I told him Wei Jiahui would come to pick me up, Su Yifan still insisted, then I'll protect both of you. After all, if Wei Jiahui got hurt, you'd be heartbroken. There was nothing I could do to stop it, so every day, everyone would see Wei Jiahui giving me a ride on his bike, with Su Yifan chasing after us. A few months later, I gave birth to a daughter. I had been so well nourished during the pregnancy that the baby was too large for a natural delivery. So I ended up having a C-section. The whole ordeal scared Wei Jiahui half to death. Without telling a soul, he quietly went to the family planning clinic and got a vasectomy, only informing me after my condition had stabilized. It was only later that I found out I had suffered a massive hemorrhage during the C-section. Fortunately, Su Yifan had the same blood type and donated a significant amount of blood, which ultimately saved my life. I had planned to properly thank him after my postpartum confinement, but by the time I finished, I learned he had already left to teach in the remote Northwest. He left me a letter. The letter was filled, line after line, with apologies. Reading between the lines, it seemed he never intended to return in this lifetime. He said he failed to raise our child well and hoped to do better by educating other people's children. but perhaps it's for the best. The debt he owed me from our past life is finally settled. Story 2, in my past life, Chen-Lin married me for a dowry of 5,000 yuan. After marriage, he played the cultured gentleman, sipping tea and reading newspapers, while I toiled in the fields, hauling manure to support the family. But when he climbed the social ladder and caught the eye of the county magistrate's daughter, he heartlessly drove me to my death. Having married a country bumpkin like her is a stain on my life. After my rebirth, I slapped that rumor-mongering mouth of his shut. Me, desperately clinging to you. Who do you think you are? Some celebrity. Hello everyone, and welcome to Glimmering Whispers of Love. I had just come back from the fields to find my doorstep crowded with gossiping villagers. They were all twisting the knife in my father's heart. Old Sue raised a fine daughter, throwing herself at a man before she's even married. Seeing me approach, the meddlesome auntie raised her voice even louder. That Chen boy sure has a way with things, getting a wife for free without spending a penny. I'll plow your fields and water them today, and tomorrow I'll give you a whole litter of fat, healthy sons. The crowd erupted into raucous laughter, their gazes fixed on me with undisguised mockery. My parents were left speechless with rage, yet the man at the center of it all, Chen-Lin, put on an air of aloof superiority and cut in with a dismissive sneer. What nonsense are you talking? She's the one who wouldn't leave me alone. Then, he turned a look of utter contempt and disgust on me. Why are you back so early? Is the plowing for my family's fields finished? My mother isn't well. I told you to make some chicken soup and take it to her. What are you standing there for? Did you hear me or not? In my past life, I was blinded by the so-called intellectual halo of his education. Before marriage, I supported his entire family. After marriage, I financed his studies for the college entrance exam. Little did I know, the man by my side was a wolf in sheep's clothing. It wasn't until the blisters on my palms began to sting that I was jolted back from my impulse to fight him to the death. He said coldly, if you're so helpless, go get a disability certificate. Who do you think you are? As soon as the words were spoken, the villagers who had gathered to watch fell completely silent. Chen-Lin had never been humiliated like this before, and he was instantly seething with rage, grinding his teeth in fury. Plenty of women are into me. If you weren't so shamelessly persistent, I wouldn't even give you a second glance. I was so angry I laughed. My hand shot up and I slapped him hard across his smug face. Me, chasing after you? What, do you think you're some kind of celebrity? Chen-Lin's face flushed with a mix of anger and humiliation, and he turned and fled. The villagers all looked at me as if I were possessed. Even my own mother, her face full of worry, reached up to feel my forehead. My dear, are you suffering from heatstroke or a fever? Chen-Lin and I grew up together, childhood sweethearts. Ever since I was little, I'd chase after him, calling him Big Brother. He was a brilliant student, the only one from all the surrounding villages to get into a high school in the city. Meanwhile, I was just a simple country girl who started working the fields early. If he hadn't failed the college entrance exam, I never would have dreamed he'd come back to Qingshui village. What I saw as weathering the storm together, he viewed as a humiliating chapter of his past. When I went to the fields that afternoon, of all people, I ran into my former sister-in-law, Chen-Li. Dressed in a blouse and long skirt with a fashionable hairstyle, she didn't look the least bit provincial. Seeing me with a hoe on my shoulder, she stopped me with an air of haughty superiority and asked, have you lost your mind? My family's land is to the east. Where do you think you're going? She was in junior high school in the county town and still didn't know what had happened that morning. I couldn't be bothered to argue with some snot-nosed kid, so I just muttered crazy and tried to walk away, but Chen-Li wouldn't let it go. She shoved me, making me stumble. Stop playing hard to get. Plenty of women are dying to marry into our family. You're nothing special, I sneered. No surprise there, cut from the same cloth, both as thick-skinned as each other. Seeing me stay silent, she thought she had the upper hand and grew even more insulting. My brother is the only college graduate in the whole village. For a country bumpkin like you to land him, your ancestors must have been burning incense for 8 generations straight. She's just as arrogant as Chen-Lin, thinking her education makes her superior. In my past life, I gave her my all, only for her to constantly stir up trouble. She made my married life a living hell. More and more people gathered to make snide remarks, and I was done indulging her. He let out a soft, derisive chuckle, cutting straight to the heart of the matter and stripping away her last pretense. How long do you plan on holding on to that money your family borrowed? Are you just going to play dead and pretend it never happened? Chenli's face flushed crimson with shame, and she hastily raised her voice to cut him off. Shut up, your family gave that to me willingly, Mr. Chen passed away early, leaving his widow and children to fend for themselves. They could barely put food on the table. It was only through the support of my parents that the brother and sister could afford an education. We've been too kind to this family for too long. And they've forgotten who puts the clothes on their backs and food in their mouths. With old grievances and fresh anger welling up inside me, I threw caution to the wind and lashed out. Your own brother signed this IOU himself, and you still dare to deny it. Did all that schooling go right over your heads? My close girlfriends, who had long disliked Chenli, were quick to pour fuel on the fire. Oh, look who's talking. Walking around with your nose in the air, looking down on everyone. And it turns out you're up to your neck in debt. Refusing to pay back a debt goes against all decency. This whole family wants to freeload off others and act entitled about it. Chenli looked as if she had suffered the greatest injustice imaginable, instantly breaking into sobs so violent she could barely catch her breath. She lunged at me like a madwoman. You bitch, I'll tear your mouth to shreds and make sure you can never marry my brother. But with her delicate, pampered skin, she was no match for the strength I'd built up from years of farm work. A few slaps from me was all it took to put them in their place. Having vented my pent-up anger, I found a renewed vigor for my work. But before long, my reputation for disciplining that brother and sister pair had spread throughout the entire village. My mother hastily dragged me off to apologize. If word of this gets out, what respectable family will want to marry you? Chenlin is such a good catch. You won't find another opportunity like this. I, however, found some paper and a brush, and by the flickering candlelight, I clumsily wrote the first character, Zhen. My mother couldn't bend my stubborn will, but she was still pacing around in a frantic worry. I admired my own masterpiece with a dismissive air. I don't need a man to survive. If Chenlin can study, then I'll study even better than him. Word got out that I was going to night school, and I became the laughingstock of the whole village. My father frowned and sighed with worry. What's all this nonsense? What's the use of a girl studying? I retorted, feeling indignant. Then how come Chenli gets to go to school? My father stubbed out his cigarette and snapped angrily. Her father is the village clerk. Of course she gets to study. It's only right. His ignorance made my head spin with frustration. But I ignored his objections and went to the night school anyway. When I arrived, I realized I was the only girl in the whole class. A bunch of guys were gathered around Chenlin, and the moment I walked in, they started whistling and catcalling. Chenlin's charm really is something. Huh, even his little sweetheart came all the way to school to wait for him. Morals are really declining these days. Women nowadays have changed. They don't have an ounce of self-respect. I ignored their mocking stares and simply took out my paper and pen to practice calligraphy. But Chenlin just had to stir up trouble, standing righteously in front of my desk to scold me. I'll let it slide that you pestered me outside, but this is no place for you. Get out of here. The lead in my pencil snapped, and I clenched my fist in anger. Suppressing the fury burning within, I snapped, don't flatter yourself, get lost. Perhaps not expecting me to have genuinely changed my temperament, Chenlin was taken aback and, for once, softened his tone. He said in a low voice, tugging at my sleeve, all right, go water the soybean field at my place tonight. Don't pull that petty, womanly nonsense. Back in the day, if he'd just say a few kind words to me, I'd be over the moon. In the prime of my youth, I worked myself to the bone like a common laborer. I was just about to snap back when Chenlin's old mother came shuffling over. Seeing me there too, she immediately looked crestfallen, her face falling as she slapped her thigh in distress. The crops won't wait for anyone. You can't expect these old bones of mine to do the work, can you? In the past, my heart would have melted at the thought of his ailing mother and young sister. Seeing Chenlin's troubled expression, his mother pulled me aside and started sweet-talking. Xiaozhen, in my heart, you're already my daughter-in-law-to-be. If you don't care for Chenlin, who will? She talked a good game, but when Chenlin was transferred to work in the county town, she was also the first to turn her back on me, finding fault with everything I did. My son is good enough for the director's daughter. Marrying a country bumpkin like you was the worst luck in the world. Thinking of this, I decisively shook off her pestering. She planted her hands on her hips and started yelling, how dare you say that? Anyone hearing you would think I was Chenlin's real mother. Old Mrs. Chen's face turned pale with rage, but she was so startled by me that she fell silent. She slumped to the floor, wailing about how miserable her life was. Drawing a crowd of onlookers to the classroom door, The teacher walked in with his lecture notes tucked under his arm, his brow furrowed as he asked the person to leave. Chen-Lin had requested 2 weeks of agricultural leave and left in such a hurry that he didn't even have time to pack up his books. He just shot me a look of utter disappointment, but I couldn't even be bothered to look up. Completely ignoring how that whole family cursed and grumbled their way out, I studied very hard at night school and earned a certificate of excellence. The village's old accountant is about to retire. The requirements aren't too high, just basic literacy and numeracy, and the ability to get along well with the folks in the village. The moment I suggested giving it a try, my father flew into a rage. "What's a girl like you doing out there making a spectacle of yourself? You'll be the laughingstock of the town." Chen-Lin's mother never lifts a finger unless there's something in it for her. She's always popping over to our house for a visit. The whole point of her visits is to pressure me into marrying Chen-Lin as soon as possible, so we can have a big, healthy baby boy by next spring. My own mother is easily swayed, and she's also been pleading with me to settle down, saying that marrying a good man sooner rather than later is the most important thing. Old Mrs. Chen's words were sweet as honey, but her calculations were sharper than anyone's. Chen-Lin was useless for any kind of manual labor. A short stint in the fields would leave him half dead with exhaustion. Once I marry into that family, the whole lot of them will have everything handed to them on a silver platter. With all their worries taken care of, and that coveted accounting position also requires the right social connections and careful networking. In my past life, Chen-Lin only married me for that 5,000 dowry, yet he turned around and looked down on me for being illiterate, saying I embarrassed his intellectual reputation. Just thinking about that hypocritical face of his makes my skin crawl with disgust. But Chen's mother would beam from ear to ear the moment she saw me. Clutching my hand with a grin that wouldn't fade, "Seems you've forgotten how we just had a nasty falling out not long ago. Xiaozhen's got a nice, round backside, looks like she'd be good for bearing children. She'll give my Chen-Lin a son to carry on the family name." A flicker of impatience crossed Chen-Lin's face before he tried to placate me with empty words. "Xiaozhen, don't be angry with me. Who else can you rely on for the rest of your life?" Seeing my parents' hesitation, he deliberately raised his voice to show off. "I'll be working in the county town sooner or later. Once I get an urban household registration, you can just wait to live a life of ease with me." That mother and son played off each other, painting a rosy picture of a wealthy son-in-law for my parents. Only after the old couple was swayed did they change tack and hint at being short on cash. My father took a drag from his long-stemmed pipe, then nodded and pointed to the several large sacks of grain leaning against the wall. "Selling these should bring in about 1,000. We'll use it for Xiaozhen's dowry." I was instantly furious and cut him off. "No one's selling anything. That money was meant for the new house. I'd like to see anyone try and lay a finger on it." The smile instantly vanished from Mother Chen's face. "Your parents have spoken. What right does a little girl like you have to interrupt? Learn the proper manners of a new bride." I was so furious I laughed. I wasn't even married into the family yet, and she was already putting on the airs of a wicked mother-in-law. I shoved her aside and spat out the words, "Who do you think you are, sticking your nose into our family business? Do you need a slap in the face to remind you?" The old woman stumbled and, seizing the opportunity, plopped down on the ground, throwing a full-blown tantrum. This commotion drew a crowd that packed the front of our house. Heaven has no eyes. "Everyone, come and see the injustice." The Su family laid hands on me. An old woman, "I don't want to live anymore." Seeing her deliberately trying to blow things out of proportion, I had nothing left to fear. Right there in front of everyone, I pointed straight at Chen-Lin and cursed him without hesitation. "You useless good-for-nothing. You and your mother think you can just stand there with your hand out. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You dare to set your sights on my family's grain, looking for a beating. Are you?" Chen-Lin glared at me with a dark expression, and after a long pause, he spoke through gritted teeth in a threatening tone. "Su Xiaozhen, my patience has its limits. Don't push me too far. Don't look down on a young man in his humble days. I will repay every bit of today's humiliation." I gave a sidelong glance and sneered, deliberately making a joke to the group. "Don't look down on the poor youth. Don't look down on the poor middle-aged man. Soon enough, the dead will be the ones held in high regard." Chen-Lin had always been the golden boy of this backwater town. Recently, he's been taking one hit after another from me, and more people are seeing his true, hypocritical, and selfish nature. People aren't holding back their mockery either. "Pfft, just because you finished high school, you think you're hot stuff." Exactly. A grown man eyeing a woman's dowry money, what a disgrace to his ancestors. He was scolded until his face flushed crimson, left with his wailing mother and sniffling sister. He beat a hasty retreat. In my past life, after Chen-Lin became the accountant, he dumped all the work of dealing with people and keeping accounts on me. He thought too highly of himself as an educated man, looking down on haggling over a few cents with the country bumpkins, having lived a frugal life for so long. I had a natural knack for these things. As soon as I took over, gossip and rumors about me started spreading through the village. As I walked down the street, I was practically drowning in a sea of venomous gossip, and the one leading the charge, of course, was Chen-Lin's mother. Who knows which powerful, no good man that little hussy has latched onto this time. She wasn't satisfied with just seducing my son. She even had the nerve to steal his accountant position from him. Just you wait and see how this ends for you. Ugh, all my uncles, aunts, and in-laws are thoroughly dissatisfied with me. No matter how you spin it, a woman has no business managing these affairs. The entire Chen family is spreading malicious rumors everywhere, trying to force me to step down quietly. I wasn't just venting in frustration, I became more dedicated, pulling several all-nighters during the harvest season. Seeing that I did have some capability, the whole commotion gradually died down. Young folks really have sharp minds. They laid it all out clearly for us, so we didn't get the short end of the stick due to lack of education. What's the use of all that book learning? Ask him the price of wheat, and he can't get a single word out. The crowd erupted in laughter, but Chen-Lin alone hung his head. I could see more and more people rallying to my side. Now it was Chen-Lin's turn to lose sleep. He stopped me again and again. I know you're doing all this just to be worthy of me. If you back down on your own, I might consider giving you a chance. Only after I cursed out his entire family tree did he finally stop barking like a dog. Even Chen-Li, who despises me to the bone, came over to suck up to me for no reason. She handed me a small note, forced out an innocent smile, and said sweetly, "Sister Qiaoshan, my brother has feelings for you. Meet him at the back hill tonight. Don't miss your chance." I was just about to crumple it up and toss it in the trash when I heard Chen-Li's low grumbling outside the door. If it weren't for helping my brother, I wouldn't even bother with her. Good girl. Once your brother's business is settled, we mother and daughter will finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. I unfolded the crumpled note once more, and an idea came to me. When night fell, I groped my way through the darkness to the back hill, and sure enough, I saw Chen-Lin waiting in the cornfield. He pulled me into an impatient embrace, his hands roaming all over me, his tone thick with suggestion. "Qiaoshan, I realize it now. I can't live without you. I love you." It seems this family wanted to wait until the deed was done, to have me completely under their thumb, then they'd stage a scene of catching me in the act, saddling me with a reputation for loose morals. At this thought, my hatred grew even deeper. While he was fumbling to take off his clothes, I crept up behind him, grabbed a stick, and cracked him over the back of the head. With a sickening thwack, Chen-Lin dropped to the ground, out cold. I gave him a few kicks to make sure he was out like a light, then dusted off my hands and left. I didn't hit him that hard, he'll be out for the night at most. Before I left, I threw out all his clothes, leaving him nothing but a pair of red underpants to cover his shame. By the next morning, explosive news had spread throughout the entire village. Chen-Lin came hobbling back from the back hills, stark naked, having lost every last shred of his dignity. He was down with a fever for a whole week. I thought he'd lie low for a while, but then, by some stroke of dumb luck, the county magistrate read his article and specifically requested his transfer to the government office. The Chen mother and daughter were overjoyed, as if serfs had been liberated, and spent their days beaming with pride and boasting to everyone. My Chen-Lin is the capable one. Once he gets to the city and becomes a high official, what woman won't be within his reach? Some people are just born to a life of wretched poverty. They deserve to stay lowly forever. Her words were dripping with veiled sarcasm aimed at me, but this time, not a single soul uttered a word in response. Amidst the chorus of flattering laughter and agreement, Mrs. Chen grew even more smug and self-important. The very next day, the village chief, looking rather awkward, told me not to come back. Someone had already pulled strings for the bookkeeper position. While I was still puzzling over it, Chen-Li swaggered in, brimming with triumph. She swept the ledgers and abacus from my desk onto the floor, then tilted her chin up with a haughty, scornful look. "Get lost. Do you need someone to throw you out?" I was trembling with rage, but for the sake of the old village chief's difficult position, I forced myself not to explode. I endured a gauntlet of stares, whispers, and gossip the whole way. When I finally got home, my parents just sighed and shook their heads. I told you not to make an enemy of them, now look what's happened. How are we supposed to get by? There's no doubt about it, Chen-Lin is the one behind this. Before I could even go and settle the score, Chen-Lin cornered me and started making threats. Su Qiaoshan, if you swallow your pride and apologize now, I'll let it go. I don't pick fights with women. I shoved the person away and turned my face aside. Then go die right now. I don't hold grudges against the dead. The gentle, scholarly air he once had was gone. Months of labor had left him darkened and roughened. Under the absolute suppression of force, I was instantly pinned and rendered immobile. Chen-Lin's calloused fingers brushed against my cheek, his tone tinged with inquiry. You used to be so obedient and considerate, always caring for me. Why did you become a different person overnight? I prefer the Qiaoshan from before, the one who loved me with all her heart. Come back home, won't you? That gentle, weary tone was something I had yearned for my entire previous life. My heart was inexplicably stirred, but beneath the overwhelming hatred, a sliver of reason instantly returned. Seizing the moment he was dazed, I kicked him in the crotch. The pain made Chen-Lin immediately let go. Not satisfied, I viciously stomped on his bad leg a few more times. It wasn't long before he retaliated in an even more vicious way. We were renovating our house, and all the hired help we'd arranged suddenly made flimsy excuses and backed out. Father had to shoulder all the work alone, and that very night, the strain brought back his old back pain. Now, the mother and daughter from the Chen family mock us with even greater audacity. She was outside, cracking sunflower seeds and shouting curses at the top of her lungs. What's the use of raising a worthless girl? Even when her own father is bullied, she can't stand up for him. Serves you right, you little bitch, for getting so cocky. I was about to rush out to confront her, but my parents held me back, their tone full of helpless resignation. What can you do? He's destined for greatness. A high official you can't afford to cross. In the days that followed, the fair-weather friends and opportunists all started ganging up on us. The chicks my mother had raised herself were slandered by Mrs. Chen, who accused her of stealing them. Several aunts and neighbor women joined in, spreading rumors and calling her an old thief. Mother was so upset she cried all night, her eyes swollen like walnuts. Meanwhile, Chen-Lin had already ironed his suit, ready to head to the city and make his fortune. I dug out the article from the newspaper. Retribution is inevitable. It's only a matter of time. In his previous life, Chen-Lin climbed the ranks by the power of his pen, but only I knew that all those articles of his were plagiarized. The day Chen-Lin left, the county magistrate's secretary came in person to fetch him. It was an extravagantly grand affair. With a large red flower pinned to his chest, he basked in the flattery of the crowd. And there he was, putting on airs and thanking the folks back home for their support. I quickly grabbed Uncle Shen by the sleeve and urged him, do you really want to see your talent go to waste and live a mediocre life forever? But when the moment came, Uncle Shen got cold feet and hemmed and hawed about calling it off. I was so frantic, I was practically seeing smoke. Seeing the car was about to drive off, I had no choice but to push through the crowd and decisively step in front of it. Screech, only after the driver slammed on the brakes did the secretary lean out, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses to ask what was the matter. This is our only chance. I clenched the newspaper in my hand, my eyes fixed on the smug and well-dressed Chen-Lin, and shouted, I'm going to report you. Chen-Lin's face instantly tightened with tension, but he tried to maintain his composure as he tried to shoo me away. Don't listen to her nonsense. She's not right in the head, let's go. The boss is waiting. Mrs. Chen, acting like a madwoman, tried to drag me away. You bitch, just because you can't have him, you've lost your mind. Don't you dare try to ruin my son. The crowd immediately erupted in a torrent of accusations. Lunatic, psycho, a whole family of heartless, wicked schemers. A barrage of sharp words rained down like swords. The secretary shot me an impatient glance and gave Chen-Lin a reassuring nod. I've seen this kind of thing 100 times. Petty people can't stand to see you doing well. Let's go. Chen-Lin's expression softened slightly, but the look he gave me grew even more vicious. He was the type to hold a grudge and seek revenge for the slightest offense, probably already plotting how to make me suffer 1,000 cuts. Yet I felt no fear. I brandished the newspaper in my hand and challenged Chen-Lin loudly. Are you scared, or do you have a guilty conscience? Do you dare to explain clearly who exactly wrote this article? If I don't get a proper answer on this, I'll go to the government, I'll go to the newspapers, I'll go all the way to Beiping if I have to. I will get a result. After this blew up, Chen-Lin was completely exposed. he played the victim card with his sob story and lofty ideals. Kneeling at their feet and bawling his eyes out, honest Uncle Shen was completely taken in by his act. Agreed to let him build a reputation on a lie, but when he finally made it big, he lived in constant fear of his secret being exposed. He had security set a vicious dog on the benefactor who came pleading at his door. Uncle Shen, at his advanced age, suffered a painful death from rabies. This thought only strengthened my resolve to expose his hypocrisy. He was a complete incompetent. A few rounds of questioning and he couldn't keep up the act. The boss's expression grew darker and darker, until he finally waved his hand to close the case, yet even with death staring him in the face, he still tried to drag me down with him. He suddenly jabbed a finger at me with fierce aggression, as if he'd been grievously slandered. Stop playing the saint, don't tell me you're not just out for revenge. He was trying to put me on a moral high ground. Too bad I have no morals. I gave a nonchalant hum, then said provocatively, that's right. I'm here for payback. What are you gonna do about it? The atmosphere was unbearably awkward, but my usually serious boss suddenly burst out laughing at my antics. You're quite the bold and resourceful young lady, and refreshingly honest too. What's your educational background? I wiped the smile off my face and told him the plain truth. I've farmed for years, attended night school, and even served as the village accountant, only to be replaced by someone's relative. Chen Lin grew increasingly furious, but couldn't muster a single word in retort. His face flushed crimson with rage, and in a fit of fury, he looked ready to charge over and throw a punch. In an instant, he was politely but firmly shown the door. The very next day, the winds of fortune shifted dramatically. I suddenly became the talk of the town and was introduced to a job as an accountant at the big pharmaceutical factory. I was the first person in the whole village to land a proper, respectable job, after a long period of quiet and solitude. My home finally buzzed with life and activity. All those snobs who used to cross the street to avoid us are now falling over themselves to suck up. Old Sue, you're a lucky man. Our Xiaozhen has really made us proud. This is the biggest celebration in all of Clearwater Village. I always said that guy was a wolf in sheep's clothing. We were all taken in by him. Don't you two worry about it another second. As for Chen Lin, who was being treated like royalty just a few days ago, I instantly became a public enemy, a target for everyone's scorn and contempt. I cherished this hard-won opportunity, working even harder than I did during my night school studies. The following year, I was promoted to deputy workshop supervisor due to my outstanding performance. I built a new courtyard for the house and bought a big color TV. For a time, I was the talk of the town. Meanwhile, Chen Lin, toiling in the fields back in the countryside, seemed to have lost all his ambition and fell into a deep silence. Yet, I could always feel his lingering presence, like a ghost that wouldn't leave me alone. It was like a venomous snake lying in wait in the shadows, ready to strike at any moment. During the new year, the boyfriend I was seeing came to my family home for the first time, bringing gifts to formally introduce himself. My parents were over the moon with delight. Just as the conversation was flowing wonderfully, the door was suddenly pounded with a thunderous racket, and a stream of angry curses assaulted our ears. You witch, you ruined my son, and I'll make sure you pay for it. Marrying that worn-out whore who's been ridden by 1,000 men and slept with by 10,000. Your ancestors would be rolling in their graves with shame. Song Wen's face instantly paled, his forced smile freezing on his lips. Mother Lin had somehow barged right in and was now pointing at me, shrieking her accusations. This little slut, she lured my son into the back hills at night. Everyone in Clearwater Village knows it. You think running off first and putting on some clothes will clear your name? Ha, I'll make sure everyone sees what a shameless, desperate hussy you really are. She rattled on, spilling everything without a second thought. Behind her, Chinli chimed in tearfully, her face streaked with pitiful tears, adding her own grievances. That note back then, it was Sister Xiaozhen herself who asked me to deliver it, who knew she was capable of such a dirty trick. That mother and daughter pair are really getting into their roles. The villagers, jealous of our family's good fortune, immediately feigned a look of sudden understanding. I always wondered why Lindsay came running back alone and half-dressed. So Xiaozhen ran off first. A boy might get away with it, but a girl throwing herself at a man like that, in the old days, she'd have been drowned in a pig cage for sure. Song Wen's face was livid with rage, yet he stood firmly in front of me, shielding me. Don't be afraid, I believe you. Only then did my heart settle, but our display of affection was a dagger in Chen Lin's eyes. Like a thug with nothing left to lose, he jabbed a finger at my chest and shouted, I saw the mole on your chest that night. so quit playing the innocent virgin. A jolt of shock ran through me. Such a private place, even my own mother might not know about it. In that split second, something suddenly came to mind. Chen-Lin, as if he had gotten dirt on me, grew even more brazen in telling crude jokes about me. Chen's mother went even further, making outrageous demands, pointing at the belongings in the room, her eyes brimmed with naked greed. If you want my blessing for that tramp to marry into this family, then this house and courtyard will have to take the Chen name. And you'll need a dowry of tens of thousands to boot. Humph, my brother's the one with real skill, all this will be ours from now on. Just as Chen-Lin was laughing with a twisted, smug expression, Song Wen, who had finally reached his limit, suddenly knocked him to the ground with a single punch. Fists rained down on him like a hailstorm, and Chen-Lin instantly began wailing in agony. I'll teach you to run your filthy mouth. How dare you bully Xiaoshan? Let me go, let me go. He was beaten black and blue in no time. Only when he was forcibly pulled away did he cover his face and stagger to his feet. Only then did Mother Chen snap out of her daydream, wailing. She rushed over. My son, what sin did you commit to be haunted by this vixen? You haven't had a moment's peace since. Just as the commotion reached its peak, a stern, commanding shout cut through the air. Silence. Xiaoshan spent that entire evening with me, an old woman. Auntie Yu was the principal of the village school and was highly respected by everyone. The crowd instinctively parted to make way for her as she approached, pointing her cane at Chen-Lin and scolding him. That night, Xiaoshan came to help me calculate the county subsidy. How did she end up with you, ruining her reputation? Such a fine girl, and you don't cherish her. How could you be so cruel as to stand in the way of her marriage? That night, I took a detour to the village school, which is how I secured the crucial witness. The truth is now out in the open, but I have no intention of letting Chen-Lin off the hook. Pressing forward with an accusatory tone, you think a single mole is enough to ruin me? Is that how little you think of me? Fine, let's take it to court. We'll see who ends up behind bars, you for public indecency, or me for being spied on while bathing. The mere mention of jail time terrified Chen-Lin, draining the color from his face in an instant. My heart sank with guilt, and I stumbled backward a few steps before tripping and falling to the ground. It wasn't me. It couldn't have been. For months, I had a vague sense of being watched from the shadows. It wasn't until one time while I was showering that I heard a man's muffled cough from near the window. I was absolutely terrified out of my wits and immediately ran to report it to the security office. They kept a strict watch on the entrances and exits for quite some time, but unfortunately, they still didn't catch that scoundrel. Thinking back on it now, it was definitely Chen-Lin. Only then did Chen's mother realize the gravity of the situation, sobbing and wailing. She knelt at my feet and cowed out heavily several times. Xiaoshan, you mustn't call the police. Lindsay's future is already ruined. He can't afford to have a criminal record on top of that. Chenli was also terrified, her face pale as she slapped herself a few feeble, ineffectual slaps. Sister Xiaoshan, my brother only peeked at you because he likes you. Please let me, his sister, make amends on his behalf. I grabbed a fistful of her hair, swung my arm back in a wide arc, and then slapped her with all my might. Make amends? Who the hell do you think you are? You think you can just apologize and that's it? With a suspect in custody, the case was cracked wide open in no time. The day Chen-Lin's verdict was announced, his mother and daughter nearly cried their eyes out. He had been held in the detention center for days. When the trial began, he was unshaven and his eyes were dull. Yet the look he gave me remained as complex as ever. There was resentment. There was bitterness, and even a kind of inexpressible guilt. Xiaoshan, I'm so sorry. I paid them no mind. Instead, I took my husband's arm and said my final goodbye to him, but the Chen mother and daughter wouldn't let it go. They went straight to my workplace, unfurling a banner that accused me of destroying their family. Song Wen, worried the gossip would get to me, took time off from our wedding leave to take me on our honeymoon. While the mother and daughter were still kneeling in front of the factory, wailing their hearts out, I had already dolled myself up, pulling my suitcase and striding over in my expensive little heels to sneer. Your son isn't even dead yet. What's with the premature mourning? When that day really comes, I'll join the crowd and howl a couple of times too, to mourn his pitiful life. Chen-Li's eyes reddened, her voice choked with a bitter, gritted teeth intensity. You bitch. We'll keep making your life hell until you lose your job. You'll wish you were dead. I casually swept back a lock of my wavy hair, its scent lingering in the air, and glanced at my watch with an air of indifference as I replied, a lovely plan, but if the money isn't paid by the time I'm back next month, I'll be doing you a favor, reuniting your whole family behind bars." The mother and daughter completely lost it, sobbing and wailing that they wanted to die, thoroughly satisfied. I finally linked arms with Songwen. "Let's go." He affectionately booped my nose. "My dear wife is the queen of payback. I wouldn't dare disobey your teachings." I giggled uncontrollably, then leaned in mysteriously close to his ear. "Wrong. My specialty is kicking a man when he's down, right in his good leg." That's all for today's story. If you've listened this far, please leave a comment saying, "Have a great day every day. We at Wigwam wish you happiness each and every day." Story 2. As a medicinal vessel, my veins flow with blood that can cure 100 poisons. In my past life, I fell for the physician Gu Qingyu who came to the Tianshan mountains to gather herbs, and I eloped down the mountain with him, forsaking everything. He treated me with utmost tenderness, saying my blood was a gift from the heavens that should not be caged. He sweet-talked me into believing he was my destined soulmate, but when his childhood sweetheart, Yu Wenting, was struck by a rare poison, he bound me to an alchemical furnace and drove 99 silver needles into every joint and bone of my body. As the flames consumed me, he collected my flowing blood while soothing his beloved. "Sia, you were born to be a remedy, that you can extend my Tinger's life is your supreme honor. Be good, don't cry out, or the potency will be lost." I was refined alive for 7 days and 7 nights, forced to watch as my blood drained away and transformed into pill after pill. He fed the pills to his Tinger, curing her illness. On their wedding day, they went so far as to have my remaining ashes fired into a teacup. They drank from it daily, parading their so-called undying love for all to see. Given a second chance at life, I found myself back on the day we were to elope. Gu Qingyu was waiting for me at the foot of the mountain, but I turned and walked into the cavern of 10,000 poisons instead. I offered myself to the creature, corrupted by miasma and rumored to devour human flesh and blood. 1. The agony of flame searing my skin felt branded into my very soul. 99 silver needles pierced my entire body, channeling my blood toward the furnace's core. Gu Qingyu stood outside the furnace, holding a long jade ladle, gently stirring my gradually melting flesh within the cauldron. Yu Wenting, pale and pitiful, leaned against his chest. "Qingyu, her screams are so agonizing. I'm scared." Gu Qingyu held her even tighter, his voice carrying a tenderness I had never heard before. "Don't be afraid, Tinger, this is the honor of her role as a medicine person. Hush, close your eyes, it will be over soon." He looked at me again, his brow slightly furrowed. "Sia, stop crying out, it will interfere with the medicine's efficacy." My throat was already too hoarse to make a sound, reduced to nothing but a guttural, mournful rasp. I looked at him, the man who had once combed my hair and painted my brows, who said my existence was a heavenly gift, not a cage, who promised to show me all the splendors the mortal world had to offer. So, the splendid blossoms he wanted to show me were merely the ornament to their love. After I had turned to ashes, in my final moment of fading consciousness, I saw him refine my flesh and blood into a golden elixir, which he then carefully fed into Yu Wenting's mouth. My eyes snapped open, and the foot I had raised to descend the mountain halted and withdrew. I turned and ran without hesitation toward the forbidden area of the back mountain, the 10,000 Poisons Cavern. Inside the 10,000 Poisons Cavern, miasma filled the air, and venomous creatures crawled everywhere. It was the dwelling of Wen Huaizhou, the world's foremost sword cultivator, who had been corrupted by the poisonous vapors and was rumored to devour human flesh and blood. He was afflicted with a rare and strange poison, and only the potent toxins within the 10,000 Poisons Cavern could suppress it, and so, he was bound to the 10,000 Poisons Cave, unable to take a single step beyond it. In my past life, I was refined into an elixir, with my soul having nowhere to go, it could only cling to my own ashes. I watched with my own eyes as Gu Qingyu and Yu Wenting had my ashes fired into teacups. Day after day, they would drink from them, their affection for each other palpable and intimate, that is, until when Huaizhou stormed the 10,000 Poisons Cave. With one stroke of his sword, he beheaded Gu Qingyu. With another, he pierced straight through Yu Wenting's heart. Cradling the small teacup, he said, "Ayue, I'm taking you home." When Huaizhou found a place of serene beauty and, with his own hands, erected a tombstone for me. With this final act complete, deprived of the suppressing miasma of the 10,000 toxins grotto, the strange poison within him erupted completely, and so he sat before my grave, blood streaming from his 7 orifices, his life force ebbing away bit by bit. A single, scalding tear of blood fell from the corner of his eye as he lay dying. striking the tombstone and searing my very soul. Only then did the belated realization dawn on me, while I was recklessly throwing myself at another man, someone, unseen, had loved me with a depth I never knew. Little one. From within the cave came the familiar voice of Wen Huizhou. A pang of sorrow hit me, and all the grievances and regrets from this life and the last welled up in my heart at once, blurring my vision instantly. Everyone says that Wen Huizhou, who dwells in the 10,000 poison cave, has long been corroded by the toxic miasma, becoming a twisted creature, neither man nor ghost, but I alone know that isn't true. The Tianshan mountains were desolate and cold, with only him and me there. I would occasionally bring some homemade food to the 10,000 poisons cave to chat with him and pass the time. Before my master passed away, he warned me that the world is full of treacherous people and that I must never leave the mountain, but when Guqingyu promised me a lifetime of devotion, just the two of us, I naively believed he was my destined one. In my past life, before deciding to descend the mountain, I made a special trip to bid farewell to Wen Huizhou. At that moment, he was sitting on the mossy stone at the cave's entrance, polishing the sword that never left his side. After hearing me out, he said nothing. In silence, he simply pressed a bone whistle into my hand. If you need me, sound it. He said he would come, no matter what. With a single blast of the whistle, he gathered my remains and avenged my deepest, blood-soaked grudge. In the end, he even gave his own life. In my past life, I never understood what lay hidden in his inscrutable gaze when he handed me that bone whistle. Only now do I finally understand. It was a love, fiercely suppressed and utterly unspoken. 2. When Huizhou had his back to me, cat got your tongue. Has some village boy down the mountain stolen your wits so completely you've forgotten how to speak? There was a tinge of something in his tone, a sourness I'd never heard from him before. When I still didn't respond, he finally turned around. The moment he saw my red-rimmed eyes, a murderous aura instantly radiated from his entire being. Did Guqingyu hurt you? I could hold back no longer and threw myself into his arms. I tightened my arms around him, burying my face in his solid chest, and said in a muffled voice, Wen Huizhou, I'm not leaving. I can't bear to be apart from you. Wen Huizhou's body went rigid all at once, his breath catching in his throat. Only the faint blush coloring the tips of his ears betrayed his inner turmoil. He shoved me away abruptly, his eyes refusing to meet mine, and made to leave the cave with his sword in hand. I knew that bastard Gu was no good. Just you wait, I'm going to finish him off. Are you insane? I stepped in front of him. If you leave the 10,000 poisons cave, you'll die. In our past life, the only reason he could break free from the shackles of the 10,000 poisons cave was because I was dead, with nothing left to lose. He sought revenge for me with a heart set on death. In this life, I will never let him walk down that same tragic path again. I looked at him and said, Wen Huizhou, my blood can neutralize 100 poisons, so naturally it can suppress your toxin. Let me be your antidote, please. This time, it's my turn to save him. Wen Huizhou gazed at me deeply, his eyes inscrutable. Sia, do you have any idea what you're saying? I couldn't be bothered to argue with him any longer. I simply drew the dagger from my waist and moved to slash my wrist. But he seized my wrist in an iron grip, his strength terrifying. Nonsense, he growled, his eyes filled with undisguised fear and anguish. If the price of my cure is your pain, then I'd rather rot in this den of poison for all eternity. Some would drain me of my blood, while others treasure me as if I were the most precious jewel, unwilling to see me suffer even the slightest harm. My eyes grew hot with tears again. Then how can I cure you? I asked, my voice trembling. When Huizhou fell silent for a long moment, his gaze traveled from my face, down to my lips, and finally settled on my hand, which was clutching his sleeve in a tight grip. Well, his Adam's apple bobbed. There is another way. He stopped, saying no more. I grew frantic. What way? Tell me. He averted his gaze, his voice low and husky. Carnal union. He explained that through the union of yin and yang, and the merging of our lifeblood, my medicinal essence could be more directly integrated into his meridians. It wouldn't harm my body, and the effect might even be greater. I stood frozen in place, my cheeks burning with a sudden, fierce heat. Seeing my lack of response, when Huizhou turned away, forget it, he said, pretend I never mentioned it. This 10,000 poisons grotto isn't so bad. Really, but I grabbed his sleeve, my head bowed so low in embarrassment it nearly touched the ground. My voice was as faint as a mosquito's hum. I'm willing. A smile played at the corner of Wen Huizhou's lips. He pulled me closer, forcing me to look up at him. Are you sure about this? He asked. If you save me, then I'm yours. we'll be bound together for the rest of our lives. Don't even think about getting rid of me. I couldn't bear to meet the intensity of his gaze. So I just nodded frantically. The next moment, I felt weightless as when Huizhou swept me up into his arms. I gasped in surprise, instinctively wrapping my arms around his neck. He stepped further into the room, his low chuckle brushing my ear. No time to waste, lest my little alchemist changes her mind. When Huizhou was insatiable, as if pouring out all the pent-up emotions of these years, taking me again and again. It wasn't until noon the next day that I finally rose. Supporting my sore and weary waist, he was still asleep. Perhaps the strange poison in his body had eased, for his complexion was much rosier than usual, and the deep furrow in his brow had smoothed away. I slipped quietly out of bed, intending to return to my own courtyard to change into fresh clothes. To my surprise, I saw Gu Qingyu and Yu Wenting right at the courtyard gate. 3. Gu Qingyu saw me and hurried over to meet me. "See ya, I waited for you all day yesterday at the foot of the mountain. Why didn't you come?" As his hand was about to touch my arm, I recoiled in disgust, leaving him grasping at air. Gu Qingyu's hand froze mid-air, a wounded look on his face. "See ya, what's wrong with you?" Seeing him look at me with such deep affection, if I hadn't already been tortured to death by him once, I might have drowned in this false tenderness all over again. Yu Wenting behind him chose that moment to cough twice, then leaned her delicate, boneless body against Gu Qingyu. She spoke in a faint, breathless voice. "Sister Xia, Brother Qingyu stayed up all night waiting for you yesterday. At the first light of dawn, he was so worried something had happened to you that he rushed up the mountain to find you." Watching their little act, I felt a wave of nausea churning in my gut. "I'm not going down the mountain, you all go on ahead." A look of bewilderment crossed Gu Qingyu's face. "Why, we agreed you'd come down the mountain with me. Are you still upset about what happened last time?" A few days prior, Gu Qingyu had also taken Yu Wenting up the mountain to gather herbs. Somehow, Yu Wenting managed to knock over the candlestick, and the ensuing flames quickly set my storeroom, crammed with rare medicinal herbs, ablaze. The fire raged, trapping both her and me inside. Gu Qingyu rushed in and spotted me immediately, but upon hearing Yu Wenting's cries, he instantly changed course. All he left me with was a hurried shout, "Hold on, Xia, Tinger is frail, I must save her first." The flames were licking at the hem of my skirt. I scrambled out the window for dear life, utterly disheveled. When I looked up, I saw Gu Qingyu had already rescued Yu Wenting. He was holding her tightly, whispering soothing words. After the fire was put out, the rare herbs and plants my family had collected for generations were reduced to nothing but ashes on the ground. But Gu Qingyu said, "We're leaving the mountain anyway. These things don't matter. In my past life, I was a complete fool, always making excuses for Yu Wenting's accidents. Looking back now, it's clear she had malicious intentions towards me all along." Gu Qingyu's voice pulled me from my memories. "Tinger is like a sister to me. If anything happened to her, I could never forgive myself. Xia, you're always so understanding. You won't blame me for this, right?" I couldn't be bothered with their pretenses any longer. I said, "I'm not leaving. Are you deaf?" Gu Qingyu grew frantic. "Xia, are you truly content to be trapped on this mountain for the rest of your life? It's desolate and lonely here. What could possibly hold you? And in the 10,000 poison caverns of the back hills lives Wen Huizhou, a flesh-eating monster. How could I ever rest easy, leaving you here alone?" Hearing the word monster pass his lips, the warmth in my eyes instantly froze over. The so-called monster he speaks of is the only person in this world who has ever been truly kind to me. I fixed my gaze on him. "Gu Qingyu, tell me the truth. Do you truly wish to spend the rest of your life with me? Or do you have some other motive?" Gu Qingyu's eyes flickered for a moment, yet he flatly denied it. What nonsense are you talking? My feelings for you are as clear as day, witnessed by heaven and earth." Upon hearing this, Yu Wenting fixed a venomous glare on me, then suddenly broke into a violent coughing fit, even bringing up a trace of blood, as expected. Gu Qingyu was instantly drawn to her, his face full of anxiety and heartache. Completely forgetting I was there, leaning against his chest, Yu Wenting gave me a weak smile. "Sister, you're truly fortunate to have Brother Qingyu care for you so much. Not like me, born frail, I can only be a burden to him, a dead weight." Gu Qingyu hurried to comfort her, his eyes filled with a tenderness and concern I had never received. I couldn't bear to watch their nauseating display any longer and turned to go back inside. But then, Gu Qingyu produced a small white jade porcelain vial from his robes and held it out to me. "Tinger isn't feeling well, so I'll take her down the mountain first. If you don't wish to leave, you may stay a few more days. I'll come back for you in a couple of days." His demeanor softened, his voice thick with concern, "But I can't help worrying about you. This is a special incense I made to ward off my asthma. It repels poisonous insects and snakes. Keep it with you, just in case." My eyes were fixed intently on the porcelain vial in his hand. In my past life, he had given me one just like this. I believed it. I placed it by my pillow each day, lulled to sleep by its scent each night. Little did I know, this was no plague-repelling incense, but a soul-summoning one. Its fragrance would slowly erode my mind, leaving my entire body weak and my bones aching. By the time he bound me to the alchemy furnace, I didn't have the strength left to offer even a shred of resistance. Seeing that I wouldn't take it, Guchinyu shoved it into my hand regardless. "Take it, be good." The moment he turned and walked away, I flung my arm out without a second thought, hurling the white jade porcelain bottle violently to the side. To prevent Guchinyu from showing up at my door again, I simply packed up some daily necessities and moved into the 10,000 Poisons cave. Little did I know, I had just escaped the wolf's den only to fall into the tiger's lair. Ever since when Huizhou had his first taste, he developed an insatiable appetite for more. He's positively glowing every day, full of more energy and vigor by the hour. Meanwhile, poor me has to get out of bed each morning with legs trembling. That day, while I was still lost in sleep, I felt a flurry of warm kisses raining down on me. A jolt of alarm shot through me. Realizing something was off, I rolled off the bed with a frantic lurch just before he could pin me down. My old hen back in the yard said she was laying an egg today. I'd better go check on her. I made up a flimsy excuse, grabbed my clothes, and threw them on. When Huizhou propped himself up on his elbow, watching me from the bed, his dark eyes filled with undisguised disappointment. "All right," he said, "come back early." I mumbled a vague reply and fled in a panic. Just as I reached the gate of my small courtyard, a figure darted out from nowhere and seized my wrist. "See ya, where have you been these past few days? I've been looking for you for ages." Guchinyu had dark circles under his eyes and a frantic expression. Grabbing my arm, he urged, "Let's get down the mountain now, we can't waste any more time." My heart skipped a beat as I suddenly remembered, on this very day in my past life, it was when Yu Wenting's condition took a turn for the worse. I eyed him warily, forcefully shook off his hand, and put a good 3 paces between us. Guchinyu gritted his teeth, the gentle facade on his face beginning to crack. His eyes were filled with anguish, yet his voice remained tender. "See ya, Tinger, she's been poisoned," with bloodshot eyes. He pleaded, trembling, "You're the only one who can save her. I know drawing your blood will harm you, but Tinger, she's fading fast." He took a step forward, his gaze burning into me, and promised with deliberate emphasis, "You like me, don't you? If you'll just save her, I swear, the moment she's fully recovered, I'll have you carried into my home in a grand wedding procession." The exact same words as in my past life. In my past life, I was deceived by these very words and willingly gave a bowl of my blood. Even though Yu Wenting's illness was already cured, she kept feigning weakness and misery in front of him, coaxing him to take blood from me again and again, until I was completely drained and exhausted. Watching his display of heartfelt sincerity, I found it utterly ridiculous and let out a cold, mocking laugh. "What does that have to do with me, Guchinyu? You only approached me from the very beginning for my blood. Didn't you? You and Yu Wenting are a perfect match, yet you had the gall to feign deep affection for me. You want me to save her. In your dreams." Guchinyu's mask of hypocrisy shattered piece by piece, revealing the monstrous truth beneath. I had intended to be gentle with you." He sneered with a sinister grin, "but since you insist, don't blame me for what comes next." Before the words had fully left his mouth, he flung a handful of white powder straight at me. A wave of terror washed over me. I held my breath and stumbled backward, but a faint trace still reached my nostrils. The world spun violently. I felt all my strength drain away, my vision went black, and I plunged into complete darkness. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was that familiar alchemical furnace, the very one that had burned me for 7 days and 7 nights. How could this be? Even after being reborn into a new life, how did I end up here again? A boundless despair instantly swallowed me whole. Creak, the door to the dark room swung open, and Guchinyu entered, holding a tray of silver needles. He walked up to me, picked up the longest one, and hovered it over the spot above my heart. "See ya, don't blame me. I'll be very careful. I won't let it hurt too much." The searing pain of the cold needle tip piercing deep into my flesh made my vision swim and darken. The vision of my past life, being consumed by flames. My blood drained drop by drop, overlapped with the present moment, and I could scarcely tell which was which, just as Gu Qingyu picked up a second silver needle, poised to drive it in again. Boom. The thick wall of the secret chamber was violently shattered by a tremendous force. Amidst the swirling dust and debris, a figure shrouded in a chilling, malevolent aura appeared like a phantom. When Huaizhou's gaze swept across the room, when he saw me, bound to the alchemy furnace, face deathly pale, blood dripping from my wrist, his crimson pupils contracted sharply, the aura around him churned with savage fury, threatening to devour the entire, cramped secret chamber. 5. The sword's gleam sliced through the air, leaving nothing but a blur in its wake. A blossom of blood burst forth on Gu Qingyu's wrist, still clutching the silver needle, before it clattered to the ground with a sharp ting. He didn't even have time to see what happened before a searing pain seized him, and he stumbled backward with a cry, when Huaizhou didn't so much as glance his way. With a flick of his wrist, his sword easily severed the chains binding me. As the cold iron links shattered, my legs gave way, and I fell into a solid, trembling embrace. When Huaizhou gathered me into his arms, cradling me with the utmost care, only then did Gu Qingyu clearly see who had arrived. He was utterly horrified, even forgetting the pain in his wrist. When Huaizhou, how did you get out? Aren't you afraid of dying? When he saw the intimate posture between Wen Huaizhou and me, the possessiveness in his eyes became almost tangible. Let go of Xia, she's mine. When Huaizhou lowered his gaze, looking at him as if he were a noisy, insignificant insect. Yours. His voice was soft, yet laced with a murderous intent cold as forged ice. Another flash of cold steel, and Gu Qingyu's other tendon was severed in an instant. His hands hung limp, agony twisted his features, and genuine terror finally flooded his eyes. Gu Qingyu cried out to me through gritted teeth, Xia, come here, he'll kill you, he's a monster. I watched his wretched state with cold indifference. Go to you, so you can drain me of my blood. Gu Qingyu, furious and humiliated, snapped, so the reason you won't come down the mountain with me is because you're involved with him. Do you think Wen Huaizhou is any better? He's afflicted with a strange poison. He's only getting close to you for your blood too. Seeing my utter lack of response, he forced that sickeningly tender look back onto his face, his voice dripping with a nauseating sweetness. Xia, I only need a little, just a drop of your blood. Once Tinger is well, I'll marry you immediately. I'll take you to settle in Jiangnan, just like you've always wanted. We'll watch the flowers bloom through every season. How does that sound? Even now, he still dares to try and deceive me. I nestled deeper into Wen Huaizhou's warm embrace. Ignore him, I said, let's just go. But when Huaizhou's sword was already drawn, wait until I've killed him, he said. Gu Qingyu's face turned deathly pale. He scrambled and stumbled toward the gaping hole in the blasted wall, vanishing from sight in the blink of an eye. When Huaizhou held me in his arms and made no move to give chase, I knew he didn't want to leave me here alone. Once I was sure Gu Qingyu was far enough away, I quickly pulled myself from his embrace. Anxiously, I took his hand and looked him over from head to toe. Are you all right? We must hurry back to the 10,000 Poisons cave. What if your poison flares up? When Huaizhou pulled me back into his embrace, his arms wrapping around me with a force that felt as if he wanted to meld me into his very bones and blood, he buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice hoarse and trembling with the aftershocks of a narrow escape. I'm fine. I've been fine for a while now. I just thought, living with you in the valley of 10,000 poisons wasn't so bad, so I never mentioned it. But you, he tightened his arms around me, his voice thick with dread. If I had arrived just a moment later, I don't even dare to think, this man, who feared nothing, not even his own death, was now trembling for my sake. A heart suspended for 2 lifetimes finally settled back into place at this very moment. I patted his back gently, soothing him and, in turn, soothing myself. Back at the 10,000 Poisons cave, when Huaizhou fetched clean water without a word, dampened a cotton cloth, and began carefully wiping away the bloodstain from the silver needle's puncture over my heart, a gloom so thick it seemed impenetrable was etched between his brows. Does it hurt? He finally asked, his voice gravelly and strained. I shook my head, took his cool hand, and pressed it against my cheek. It doesn't hurt anymore. I had been far too lenient when I severed Gu Qingyu's tendons. I leaned in and kissed the corner of his tense mouth. His gaze flickered, the harshness in his eyes softening into tenderness. I changed the subject. How did you find me? When Huaizhou released me, took my hand, and pointed to the red string he had tied around my wrist at some point. The red cord was intricately woven, from which dangled a small, smooth jade bead. He raised his own wrist, where an identical one was tied, twin beads, each could sense the presence of the other. The corner of his mouth lifted in a barely perceptible curve, yet his gaze was unnervingly serious. I'm afraid you'll leave me one day, that you'll run away, this way, no matter where you are. I'll be able to find you. 6. Guchinyu staggered back into the courtyard, the scent of blood mingling with the smell of earth. A picture of utter wretchedness, a searing pain, as if his wrist bones were shattering, made his vision swim with black spots. Seeing him, Yu Wenting hurried out to meet him, her face etched with anxiety. She grabbed Guqinyu's arm and demanded without preamble, "What about Du Xia's blood? Did you get it?" Guqinyu's eyes darkened, and his brow furrowed deeply. She showed not a shred of concern for the state I was in. Seeing he didn't respond, Yu Wenting gave him a shake, which jostled Guqinyu's injury. Guqinyu drew in a sharp, pained breath. Only then did she notice his limp, hanging hands and the shocking amount of blood on them. Yu Wenting's face instantly shifted from urgency to horror, her voice rising to a sharp pitch. "Qingyu, your hand, what happened to your hand?" Guqinyu's face was deathly pale, his voice laced with bitter resentment. "When Huaizhou, he severed the tendons in my hand. He took Du Xia with him, when Huaizhou." Yu Wenting's voice shot up an octave. "How could Du Xia leave with him? What about me? What about the poison in my system?" Guqinyu couldn't make sense of it either. Du Xia was as naive as a blank sheet of paper. In the past, a few sweet words from him were enough for her to give him her whole heart, but now, it was as if she were a different person. All his usual tricks had lost their power. Seeing him fall silent, Yu Wenting's eyes welled up, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. Sobbing, she fumbled frantically for the medicinal salve. As she bandaged Guqinyu's wound, her voice choked with tears. "Brother Qingyu, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have gotten hurt like this. I want to take good care of you. Tinger really does, but I'm poisoned now. I can barely take care of myself. My heart is willing, but my strength is failing." She wiped her tears, her eyes glinting with venom. "It must be Wen Huaizhou. He must have used some foul sorcery to bewitch Sister Xia. She's always been so innocent. She wouldn't know how to guard against such wicked, underhanded tricks." Lifting her tear-filled eyes, she gazed pitifully at Guqinyu. "Brother Qingyu, I'm sure Sister Du Xia still has feelings for you. She's the only one who can save me now. Could you go and talk to her again, please?" Her words perfectly soothed the frustration and doubt churning in Guqinyu's heart. Yes, of course. That must be it. How could Du Xia, who loved him so deeply, just stop loving him like that? The memory of the icy look Du Xia gave him at the end stirred up another wave of irritation in his heart. She's just a naive little girl, raised in the remote mountains and ignorant of the ways of the world. She's merely been blinded for the moment. Once she's suffered enough by that monster when Huaizhou's side, she'll naturally come running back to him in tears, begging. When that time came, he would make sure she knew exactly who her one true pillar of support was. In the first few days after returning to the courtyard, Yu Wenting did indeed devote herself wholeheartedly to caring for Guqinyu, but this facade of shared hardship couldn't even last 10 days. Yu Wenting's poison began to flare up uncontrollably. She was in excruciating pain herself, yet still had to care for Guqinyu. The petulance and impatience in her nature could no longer be contained. Holding the medicine bowl, Yu Wenting's brow furrowed deeper and deeper, her tone shifting from initial concern to an impatient urging. "Brother Qingyu, you have to think of something. Go find Du Xia. If we delay any longer, I'm really going to die." Guqinyu sat by the window, his eyes vacant as he stared at his own trembling hands. It wasn't that he hadn't tried to find her, but the terrain of the 10,000 Poisons grotto was treacherous. Shrouded in miasma, he couldn't even get past the outer perimeter. "Time and again, I've returned empty-handed, only to end up in a sorry state." Seeing him remain silent for so long, Yu Wenting's voice grew shrill. "Say something. Are you just going to stand there and watch me die?" She slammed the medicine bowl down hard on the table, splashing the liquid and staining the surface. "Didn't you say I was your life? Now that I'm dying, you can't even bring back a single drop of blood." Guqinyu was, after all, once a master physician of great renown, yet now, his once rock-steady hands trembled uncontrollably. He couldn't even hold a needle properly, let alone perform precise acupuncture. Already vexed by this very fact, hearing Yu Wenting's words now filled his eyes with a fierce, malevolent glare. He cut her off impatiently. "Enough." Yu Wenting was stunned by his shout. "You're yelling at me. I must have been blind to fall for a useless man like you." She turned and ran out. For the first time, a wave of intense disgust welled up in Guqinyu's heart. If it weren't for Yu Wenting, he would never have sunk to such a sorry state. 7. Yu Wenting ran off in a huff that day and, true to her word, didn't come back for days. Yu tried to tough it out at first, but without anyone to look after him. Even getting a sip of hot water became a struggle. The room soon filled with a sour, rancid smell, mingled with the odor of the medicinal salve on his wounds, making it utterly nauseating. That night, a violent storm raged outside the window, with thunder crashing and lightning flashing. Yu, fearing something might have happened to Yu Wenting, rushed out in a panic to search for her, yet, after scouring all the places she might have gone, there was still no sign of her. Just as he was on the verge of giving up, he spotted Yu Wenting's figure outside an unfamiliar mansion. She was holding an oil-paper umbrella, speaking to the man beside her with a charming, radiant smile. He recognized the man. It was Dr. Jingxian, the physician who was always at odds with him and constantly trying to one-up him. Watching the two of them enter the courtyard together, Yu felt a surge of rage. A burning sense of betrayal shook him to his core. He crept silently to the base of the wall and pressed close to a half-open window. The lamplight from inside the room cast shifting shadows on the papered window. Immediately, the faint rustle of fabric could be heard from within, mingled with Yu Wenting's coy, breathless protests, and soft gasps. Yu's mind exploded, all reason shattered. He violently shoved open the half-closed door, his eyes blazing red as he stared at the intimate pair inside. "What are you doing?" Yu Wenting was startled by his wretched appearance, and her face immediately twisted into an expression of undisguised disgust and impatience. "How did you find this place? You're like a bad penny that keeps turning up." Yu was trembling with rage, pointing at her, but he couldn't even form a complete sentence. You all." Yu Wenting rolled her eyes and shrank closer to Jingxian. "What's wrong with us, Yu? I only put up with your pathetic act because I thought you could save me. Turns out you really are worthless. Now your hands are ruined. You're a broken man. Did you really think I'd stay with such a useless thing? Brother Jingxian said he has a way to save me, so stop being an eyesore and get the hell out of here." Yu's eyes bulged with fury. With a guttural roar, he tried to lunge forward, but as he was now, he was nothing but a feeble cripple, powerless to even harm a chicken. With a single contemptuous gesture, Jingxian pinned him firmly to the ground. He dragged Yu outside and flung him harshly into the icy mud. Outside, the rain poured down in torrents as thunder rumbled. Leaning against the doorframe from his position of superiority, a look of undisguised mockery played on Jingxian's lips. "Yu," he said, "take a good look at yourself. Don't you look just like a stray dog?" He paused, his voice dripping with the smugness of a victor. "Get lost. Ting'er belongs to me now." Icy rain lashed against Yu's face, mixing with mud and leaving him in a wretched state. Waves of sharp pain shot from the ruined tendons in his wrist, yet that agony was nothing compared to the rending ache in his heart. For Yu Wenting, he exhausted every means, even at the cost of destroying Ducia, whose heart and eyes held only him. Yet in the end, he himself became nothing more than a used and discarded piece of trash. How utterly ridiculous. Through the curtain of rain, he glimpsed Ducia's face once more, as if in a daze. It wasn't that cold, resolute face, but the girl from the very beginning on Tianshan Mountain, the one who would blush at his every word, who would foolishly offer up all her most treasured possessions to him. Ha, ha ha. Yu lay sprawled in the muddy water, a broken, rasping laugh escaping his throat. As he laughed, tears began to stream down his face, mingling with the rain. Remorse, like a venom, instantly seeped into his very bones and blood. 8. When Huaizhou's poison had been completely cured, yet for some reason, he stubbornly lingered in the 10,000 Poisons cave, refusing to leave. He had the gall to call it sentimental, claiming, "This is where we pledged our love, it holds special meaning." Then one day, as I was crouched at the cave entrance feeding a passing wild rabbit, he drifted up silently behind me. The poor creature, happily munching away, was so startled it vanished in the blink of an eye. "That's mine, it's eating." When Huaizhou said, his tone sharp, I was baffled. "How are the wild berries on this mountain suddenly yours?" He pulled me into his arms without a hint of shame, resting his chin on my shoulder. "What you pick is mine. Feeding it means you're using my things to curry favor with another creature." I was speechless, stunned by his bizarre logic. It took me a moment to realize, this man was jealous of a wild rabbit. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and gave the hand he had wrapped around my waist a gentle squeeze. All right, it's all yours, and I suppose that means I'm yours too. Is that good enough for you?" Only then was he satisfied, planting a kiss on my cheek. this was the very picture of tranquil happiness. I thought that after what happened last time, having both his hands broken, Gu Qingyu would surely not dare to come looking for me again. To my surprise, since he couldn't enter the 10,000 Poisons cave, he simply stood guard outside for days and nights on end. I had no intention of paying him any mind, but I couldn't escape his daily calls from outside, which grated on my nerves unbearably. When Huaizhou raised his sword and declared, "I'll go kill him," I stopped him. "Enough," I said. "I'll go see what he wants." Gu Qingyu's hair was disheveled, his face haggard and gaunt. If not for the faintly familiar contours of his face, I would hardly have recognized him as the man who once shone with such brilliance, the one to whom I had foolishly given my heart. When he saw me, a sudden glimmer of light sparked in his clouded eyes. "Xia." Gu Qingyu called out my name, scrambling and stumbling as he lunged toward me. When Huaizhou instantly rose to his feet, shielding me, and the air around him turned icy cold, Gu Qingyu shuddered, yet he still refused to leave. His knees buckled, and he dropped straight to the ground, kneeling directly in my direction. "Xia, I was wrong. I know I was wrong," he sobbed, tears and snot streaming down his face. "I was used by you, Wenting. I lost my head for a moment. I regret it so much, but I truly love you. Please, can you forgive me?" He looked up, appearing utterly wretched and pathetic. I stepped around when Huaizhou walked up to Gu Qingyu, and looked down at him. "Regret?" I let out a soft, utterly mirthless laugh. "Is it regret for what you did to me, or regret for the miserable state you've ended up in?" Gu Qingyu, drop the act, search your heart and ask yourself this. If you had succeeded back then, if you had used my blood to save you Wenting, would you have felt any remorse? No, you wouldn't have. Your regret has never been about the wrong you committed, never about hurting me or trampling on my feelings. You only regret that you lost, that you've been reduced to a worthless failure. My words left him speechless. He could only shake his head helplessly, his tears flowing even more freely. "No, that's not it, Xia. Please, give me another chance. I swear, I will never let you down again. I will treat you right." Gu Qingyu struggled, trying to grab the hem of my clothes. I took a step back, avoiding his outstretched hand. "Gu Qingyu, wipe that pathetic look off your face. Every word out of your mouth makes me sick." My words seemed to cut him to the quick. He froze on the spot, the color draining from his face. Just then, a staggering figure burst out. "Help me, please, help me." Yu Wenting collapsed before us, wailing incessantly. At that moment, her face was as pale as parchment, with dark, bloody streaks oozing from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, exuding the foul stench of impending death. Upon seeing her, Gu Qingyu's already clouded eyes were instantly flooded with crimson, his entire being contorted into a state of frenzied madness. He lunged forward and clamped his hands around Yu Wenting's slender neck with a death grip. "You wretched woman, how dare you show your face here?" Yu Wenting's eyes rolled back as he choked her, guttural gasps rasping from her throat while her hands clawed frantically at the air. "Brother Qingyu, I was wrong. Xing Xian lied to me, he had no way to save me." She forced out the words with immense difficulty, tears mingling with blood streaming down her face. "You, please beg Sister Xia, ask her to save me, please." Watching this spectacle of a dog-eat-dog squabble unfold before me, I suddenly found it utterly fascinating. I edged closer to Wen Huaizhou, clutching his sleeve, my voice tinged with a perfectly measured tremor and a hint of grievance. "Qingyu, look at her, even now, she still has the audacity to covet my blood." I gazed timidly at Gu Qingyu, mimicking Yu Wenting's former demeanor, and spoke in a fragile voice. That single utterance of Qingyu acted like an incantation, instantly igniting the last thread of sanity in his mind. Gu Qingyu turned his head to look at me, his eyes ablaze with the ecstasy of something regained and the desperation of a final, reckless gamble. "Don't be afraid, Xia, don't be afraid. I'll make her disappear from your sight forever, right now. I will never let anyone hurt you again," he roared, as if making a promise to me, or perhaps trying to convince himself. He grabbed the barely conscious Yu Wenting from the ground and began dragging her toward the nearby cliff edge. Dragged along, Yu Wenting left a pathetic trail in the dirt. The realization that Gu Qingyu truly intended to kill her finally dawned, and terror consumed her in an instant. She fought desperately, clinging to Gu Qingyu's leg with all her limbs, shrieking, "No, Qingyu. Let me go, I don't want to die, I was wrong." But the more she struggled, the more intense the madness on Gu Qingyu's face became. He dragged her, step by step, to the edge of the cliff. Yu Wenting held on to him for dear life. The two of them locked in a desperate tangle, their balance precarious. A single, Piercing scream tore through the sky as Guchinyu, dragged along with her, plummeted together into the fathomless abyss. On the wind, the echoes of their final desperate cries seemed to linger, but soon, all fell into a profound silence. I stood motionless, gazing at the mist-shrouded depths of the chasm. All the hatred and resentment of this life and the last seemed to dissipate into nothingness with their fall. A warm hand covered my eyes, blocking out everything in front of me. I was enveloped by Wen Huizhou's familiar scent. Let's go. His voice was low and steady, carrying a reassuring strength. We never finished that last game of chess. Don't even think about trying to weasel out of it this time. The past is but a prologue, and the story of Wen Huizhou and me was only just beginning. The end, that's the end of the first story, but don't go anywhere. The next one is even better. On my way home for the new year, I refused an older woman's request to switch seats with me. She actually started spreading rumors in front of everyone on the train, saying, "Where would a young girl get the money for a first-class ticket? She must have earned it by selling herself." I was about to argue back when the train's PA system suddenly announced a medical emergency. A child had gone into cardiac arrest, and they urgently needed medical personnel to assist. I'm a doctor, so my immediate thought was to rush and help, but to my shock, the older woman grabbed me tightly and wouldn't let go, insisting loudly, "Where's the attendant? This woman is smoking on the high-speed train, arrest her," because of her false accusation. The child missed the critical window for resuscitation. By the time I finally got there, the child was already gone. The middle-aged woman shamelessly insisted she'd done nothing wrong, saying, "So what if someone died? It just frees up a seat so we can switch spots." But what she didn't know was that the child who had died was none other than her own precious grandson. The trip back to my hometown was an 8-hour high-speed rail journey. To spare my backside, I reluctantly splurged on a first-class ticket. I had been on call for a surgery the night before and worked straight through until dawn. I hadn't slept a wink and was yawning uncontrollably. The moment I sat down, I started to fell asleep. I'd barely settled in when someone smacked me hard on the head. "Get up and change seats. We're in carriage 11. I was just dozing off when someone inexplicably whacked me on the head. Anyone would be annoyed by that. I looked up, suppressing my irritation, and saw a middle-aged woman, followed by a younger woman holding a baby. "Sorry, but I won't switch. Carriage 11 is second class. And this is a first-class seat. Carriage 11 is 8 cars away from here. Right now, every carriage is packed to the brim, with luggage and crowds of people filling the entire aisle. Getting there would be like trekking over mountains and through rivers." But the middle-aged woman wouldn't let it go, replying with a sarcastic, insinuating tone. "We're a family of 3 and we want to sit together so we can look out for each other. What's the big deal if a young person like you has to make a small sacrifice? At most, I'll give you $20 for it." Hearing her say that, I could only laugh in sheer exasperation. There's a price difference of over 500 yuan between first and second class. And you're only offering 20 to make up for it. That's a bit much, don't you think? If you wanted to sit together, why didn't you just buy 2 first-class tickets in the first place? You're being cheap and pretentious. I was already in a bad mood, and after that little stunt, I felt like slapping that old woman. "What's wrong with you, you little brat? Are you really that hung up on a few bucks?" Her words made me roll my eyes, and I retorted sharply, "If you don't care about money, then why don't you pay me back? Stop making sarcastic remarks. It's all because you're broke, isn't it, you bitch? You're the one who's poor. You're destined to be a pathetic pauper your whole life. I have plenty of money. It's just that a heartless person like you isn't worthy of my money." The woman was so furious she was about to curse at me, but the younger woman beside her quickly stopped her. Then, she turned to me and asked apologetically, "The way, I'm sorry. We bought the tickets too late and could only get one first-class seat. My mother-in-law is elderly and has difficulty walking, and I'm traveling with my child and thought a first-class seat would be more spacious. Would it be alright if I pay you the full price for an upgrade to first class?" Seeing the young woman's pleasant attitude and the prospect of easy money, I was actually inclined to agree. But the moment the middle-aged woman heard about the offer of payment, she looked utterly exasperated and began frantically objecting. "Pay for what? Don't young people these days have any sense of community spirit? Didn't your parents teach you to respect your elders and care for the young? Or do you not have any parents at all?" That old woman's jab instantly rekindled the anger I had just managed to calm down. I plopped back into my seat. "You must be an orphan or something. I'm not moving. How dare you speak to me like that, you little brat? No respect for your elders. I'll teach you the lesson your parents never did." With that, the woman actually rolled up her sleeves and tried to hit me, but thankfully, her daughter-in-law stepped in and stopped her. "Oh, come on, Mom, stop making a scene. They're not obligated to swap with us." Her daughter-in-law looked utterly helpless, on the verge of tears. It seems this mother-in-law is used to throwing her weight around in public. "What do you mean, not obligated? The young should always defer to their elders. What's the point of them living otherwise? If every young person was as selfish as she is, wouldn't society just descend into chaos?" Seeing this unreasonable woman making a scene, I really couldn't be bothered to argue with her, so I called for the train attendant. But who would have thought? Instead of backing down when the attendant arrived, the woman actually played the victim and complained first. "Attendant, look at the kind of people you're selling tickets to. Even on the bus, young people give me their seat. Your high-speed rail sells tickets this expensive, and you don't even screen who's buying them. Sort this out for me right now, or I'm filing a complaint." The flight attendant, who had been mistaken for a waiter, visibly stiffened. Nevertheless, she checked my ticket and, with forced patience, addressed the older woman. She said, "Ma'am, no one is obligated to switch seats with you. She purchased a ticket and has every right to the seat she paid for. Please understand." Unconvinced by the flight attendant's explanation, the woman became even more unreasonable and aggressive, jabbing her finger right in the attendant's face as she started yelling, "Fine, you're all in cahoots. We are a family of 3, and we will sit together. If you don't fix this for me, I'll file a complaint and sue you in court." The flight attendant lost her patience and sternly called over the security officer. "Sir/ma'am, the high-speed train is about to depart. Please do not disrupt the order here. If you insist on doing so, then I am authorized to have you removed from the train to prevent interference with its normal operation." "What do you mean? I paid for my ticket and you want to kick me out? Is there no justice anymore?" The middle-aged woman was just about to plop down on the floor and start wailing, but the sudden arrival of the police officer made her jump out of her skin. "Oh, for goodness sake, stop making a scene. Daji is waiting for us back home. If we miss this train, we won't be able to get another ticket. I'll just take Mingming and go sit in the second-class carriage." With that, the young woman hurriedly left the carriage with her baby, as if making an escape. Seeing that the police officer meant business, the middle-aged woman's bluster instantly deflated. She sat down next to me, clearly disgruntled, muttering under her breath. I couldn't make out what she was saying. I rolled my eyes, screaming internally, of all people, why did I have to end up next to this character? I put on my headphones, played some soothing music, and the high-speed train began to pull away. 8 more hours on the road. I really hope this old lady doesn't start any drama. All I want right now is a good sleep. But of course, she wasn't about to let me off that easily. Just as I was starting to drift off, I heard a snide remark from the seat beside me. "Just ran into some ill-mannered little brat, who knows where she got the money for a first-class ticket." Hearing that, my drowsiness vanished completely. I took off my headphones, frowned, and looked to the side, only to see that middle-aged woman on a phone call. Noticing my gaze, she rolled her eyes and continued talking as if no one else was there. "Yeah, she looks all glamorous and decked out in designer labels. Who knows how many men she's had to sleep with to afford that lifestyle." I saw red. I snatched the phone right out of her hand, hung up, and confronted her. "What are you implying? Do you even know that spreading malicious rumors is against the law?" The middle-aged woman wasn't even angry that I'd taken her phone. Instead, she just looked at me with a knowing expression, getting defensive. "Did I hit a nerve? You must have just graduated, right? A girl like you, fresh out of school, probably lands a job as an office clerk, or an accountant, making at most 3,000 or 4,000 a month. So where did you get the money for a first-class ticket that costs a couple thousand? All those designer labels must have cost a fortune. Have your parents ever owned anything that nice? You're making all that dirty money and you don't even know to show some respect to your parents. Frankly, a girl like you should have been drowned in a pond at birth." I was absolutely furious. So mad I could have walked over and slapped that woman right across the face, but my better judgment quickly cooled me down. Even though she was the one running her mouth, if I laid a hand on her, I'd be the one in the wrong, and she's the type who would make a huge scene. In the end, it would only backfire on me from every angle. The best way to deal with slander and rumors is to avoid the trap of trying to prove your innocence. Instead, fight fire with fire and give them a taste of their own medicine. So, I mimicked the old woman's sarcastic tone and gave her outfit a once-over. Well, your things look pretty expensive too. Did you have to swipe a few old men's pension checks to afford them? Hearing my words, the old woman's face changed and she roared in anger. What the hell are you talking about? Do you want me to slap you? Just then, a girl sitting in the seat in front of me turned around with her phone and said, "Auntie, I've recorded everything you just said. Spreading rumors can lead to legal consequences. You, all of you, this is outrageous. You only know how to bully a poor old woman like me." The woman was absolutely furious, her eyes filled with resentment and anger, but in the end, she didn't dare say another word. I thanked the girl in the seat in front of me and went back to resting with my eyes closed, for the next 2 hours. That middle-aged woman kept on making phone calls and cracking sunflower seeds, but at least she didn't bother me anymore, and I couldn't be bothered to deal with her. After sleeping like that for 2 hours, I got up and went to wait in front of the restroom. The person in front had just stepped out, and before I could even think about going in, someone shoved me hard from behind. I almost lost my balance. When I looked, I saw it was that same middle-aged woman again. This time holding a cup of instant noodles, probably heading to get hot water. Seeing the displeasure on my face, she stared back with a defiant, couldn't care less expression and said, "What are you looking at? Don't stand in the middle of the aisle if you're that big." I was shaking with rage, but nature was calling, and I had no time to deal with her right then. As soon as I entered the restroom, I placed my bag on the vanity. Suddenly, a plume of smoke billowed out from inside the bag. I was startled. I opened the bag and found a lit cigarette lying inside, though I had no idea how it got there. "What's going on?" I screamed in terror. "I don't smoke at all, and I don't even carry a lighter in my bag. How could there be a lit cigarette inside?" There was no time to think. The tissues, fabric, and other flammable items in my bag were already on fire. I tried to douse it with water, but that only produced thicker, denser smoke. Moments later, the smoke alarm in the restroom began blaring loudly. The next second, the high-speed train started to decelerate noticeably before coming to a complete stop. Then, a loud banging on the door started. "Are you smoking in there?" Smoking on a high-speed train is illegal and can lead to criminal detention in serious cases. Please open the door and cooperate with our investigation. What the hell is going on? I was on the verge of tears. I quickly opened the door to find the flight attendant standing there with a stern expression. "I honestly have no idea how cigarettes got into my bag. I don't even smoke." I tried desperately to explain, but the evidence was right there. Damn, I was at a complete loss for words. The passengers, already irritable from the long journey, grew frantic when the high-speed train came to a halt. Some even started cursing at me. "What are you smoking? If you've got a death wish, go take a puff in a crematorium. My wife is about to give birth. If you make me late, you'll have hell to pay. Get her arrested right now. What if she sets the high-speed train on fire? How dangerous." Just then, that middle-aged woman walked over to me with a smug look on her face and clicked her tongue at me several times. "TSK, TSK, TSK, and you claim you've never done such a thing. You're secretly into smoking and drinking, aren't you? Daring to smoke on a high-speed train. I think you're just asking for trouble. Attendant, call security immediately and have this little brat thrown in jail." Looking at her utterly arrogant expression, it suddenly hit me. That moment when she bumped into me, the aisle was wide, so why did she have to bump into me? Of all people, the zipper on my bag wasn't even closed properly. It would have been easy to slip something inside. With that thought, my face darkened, and I turned to speak to the flight attendant. "I think I'm being set up. I demand to see the security footage." The flight attendant nodded and prepared to take me to the crew cabin to review it. Just as expected, the older woman panicked and said in disbelief, "There are cameras on this bus/train/vehicle. Of course, for the safety of all passengers, there are surveillance cameras in every carriage. Please come this way, ma'am." Before the attendant could finish speaking, the woman suddenly blocked the doorway, as if to cover her own guilt. Her voice suddenly grew much louder. "What's the point of checking the cameras? This little brat is clearly just stalling for time. The evidence is right here. Hurry up and arrest her. Get up." "Look, ma'am, whether I'm innocent or not will be perfectly clear once we check the security footage. The way you're trying to stop me is making it very hard for us not to suspect you're involved in this." I narrowed my eyes, looking the woman up and down, which made her visibly uneasy. But she still held her head high and shouted defiantly, her mouth being the hardest part of her entire body, "You're the one breaking the law. Don't you dare pin it on me. Security, hurry up and arrest her. What if she gets away?" The woman planted herself firmly in the doorway, and for the moment, the few people there were at a loss for how to deal with her. Just then, the broadcast suddenly crackled to life with urgent urgency. Is there a medical professional on board? A child needs emergency assistance. As a doctor, I have to step in when I hear there's an emergency, but just as I started to move toward the back, someone grabbed my clothes and held on tight. What's the matter? Feeling guilty and trying to run away? Is that it? Let me tell you, not a chance. You've wasted everyone's time, and you're going to get down on your knees and apologize to every single person on this train. Apologize on your knees. The middle-aged woman shouted arrogantly. Completely ignoring the announcement that had just been made, I already told you it wasn't me. Someone needs emergency medical attention right now. I'm a doctor. Let me go this instant. I'm absolutely frantic. In an emergency situation, every single second is critical. A doctor, you, don't make me laugh. Are they letting just any old riffraff into hospitals these days? I see what this is. You're just trying to use this as a chance to jump off the train and escape justice. Are you quite finished? I have a medical license. I went to pull my medical license from my bag, only to find that little booklet had been burned to ashes long ago. Where are you? Can't find it now. Can you? You liar. Don't you dare run. Weren't you just saying spreading rumors and slander has legal consequences? You're the one spreading lies. I put cigarettes in your bag, and I'm going to report you right now. The woman had a death grip on me. I struggled forward, trying to break free, and in the tussle, my clothes were nearly torn, risking exposure. I had no choice but to free one hand and frantically cover my chest, but the old woman wouldn't let up. She actually pinned me down beneath her, refusing to let go no matter how much the bystanders pleaded. Let me go. She was a big woman, and her weight nearly crushed the breath out of me. Get off me. If someone dies because you didn't get help in time, could you live with yourself? I'm being crushed. I can barely breathe, he yelled with all his might. If a person like that old woman had any conscience, she wouldn't have demanded I switch seats with her so matter-of-factly in the first place. So what if he's dead? Dead is dead. No one's life is more important than mine. I've been wronged, and you owe me an explanation. Either pay up, or you're going to jail. This moment is the most powerless I have ever felt in my entire life. Just then, the sound of frantic footsteps echoed through the train car. A young woman, clutching a child, came running towards us, tears streaming down her face. A doctor? Is there a doctor here? Please, you have to save my son. He's dying. I strained to lift my head and look, and what I saw nearly made my jaw drop. Wasn't this woman the daughter-in-law of that older lady? So, that would mean the child needing emergency care was that lady's grandson. Sure enough, the weight on me vanished instantly, followed only by a heart-wrenching scream from behind. My grandson. How can it be my grandson? Someone help. Please, save my grandson. The elderly woman sprang to her feet, rushed over, and snatched the infant from the young woman's arms. Gasping for breath, I struggled to push myself up, leaning heavily on a nearby chair as I spoke. Put the child down on the floor and let me have a look. But the old lady acted as if she hadn't heard a thing, clutching her grandson. She was hopping from foot to foot in a panic, crying out over and over, "Grandson, oh grandson, wake up. How is your granny supposed to live without you?" It was as if she thought she could shout him back to consciousness. I yelled urgently, "Put the child down on the ground, now, stop shaking him like that, you're going to kill him." But, the old lady seemed stone-deaf and simply refused to do as I said. Finally, her daughter-in-law snapped. She slapped the old woman across the face and screamed hysterically, "Are you listening? Put Mingming down on the floor, now, let the doctor see him." The slap seemed to snap her out of it. She just stood there, stunned and motionless. The young woman rushed over and held her son out in front of me, begging me over and over to save her boy. The child's face had already turned blue, and he was barely breathing. I immediately began performing CPR and rescue breaths on the child. Not daring to waste a single moment, the vehicle started moving again. We had to get off at the next high-speed rail station and rush him to the hospital, but only I knew, from the very first moment I saw that child, that his chances of survival were slim, and now, all that effort was just for show, to appease the family. If only we had acted sooner, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Just then, a bystander voiced exactly what I was thinking. That damn old woman is a real jinx. What was she doing blocking the doctor? Now look, it's her own grandchild who's paying the price. Are you happy now? It's all your fault. Yet, the old woman still didn't seem to think she'd done anything wrong and doubled down, refusing to back down. How was I supposed to know? It's all this bitch's fault. if she hadn't set her own medical license on fire, I never would have been in the dark about her being a doctor. It's all on her. If my precious grandson isn't cured, you'll pay for this. She had been making disruptive noises nonstop since boarding, and her recent act of a thief crying "Stop thief" had already stirred up public outrage. Before long, everyone in the carriage was hurling abuse at this middle-aged woman, berating her until she cowered in a corner, trembling. All her previous arrogance and domineering attitude had completely vanished. Time ticked by. The journey to the next station, which should have taken only 10 minutes, was delayed by a full 4 minutes because she falsely accused me of smoking. Over 10 minutes, the child's face had turned from ashen to a deep, dusky purple, and not even the faintest whisper of a breath could be detected. We finally reached the high-speed rail station and were rushed to the nearest hospital, but just as I had feared, despite performing uninterrupted CPR and rescue breaths from start to finish, I couldn't bring him back. Come on. The hospital doctor examined the child's condition, shook his head, and sighed. It's too late. If only you had brought him in sooner or started CPR earlier. The young woman collapsed to the ground as if struck by lightning, her eyes brimming with tears of utter despair. Seeing her in such a state sent a sharp pang of anguish through my heart. She shouldn't have had to suffer like this. There was still hope for the child. I let out a long sigh and was just about to leave when I heard the woman's heart-wrenching scream. My grandson, wake up. My dear boy, don't you leave your grandma behind. The old woman was weeping bitterly. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes suddenly blazed with intense hatred. Is it because you, this wretched woman, didn't do everything in your power to save my grandson that this happened to him? He was our family's precious golden child. You killed him. I want you to pay with your life. With that, the woman charged at me like a madwoman, trying to hit me. Thankfully, she was stopped in time by the hospital security guards. Seeing her in that state, I just felt utterly drained and exhausted. You're the one who kept stopping me. If you had let me get him to the emergency room sooner, your grandson wouldn't have died. You're the one who killed him. You're the murderer, I said, enunciating every single word. Deep down, the woman knew the truth perfectly well. She just refused to admit it. Shifting the blame onto someone else was, for her, the only right choice. She tried to lunge at me, but in the next instant, her daughter-in-law flew at her like a madwoman, and the two began to grapple violently. This is all your fault. Why did you have to grab that doctor and not let her leave? Now look what's happened. Your grandson is gone. Are you happy now? Are you happy now? How much longer are you going to keep ruining this family? Will you only be satisfied when you've driven me to my death? The young woman had completely broken down. At this point, it wouldn't be surprising if she did something extreme, but the old woman was still stubborn as a mule, refusing to admit she was wrong. How dare you, you little wretch, taking an outsider's side against your own mother-in-law. Do you think I wanted any of this? If you ask me, it's all because of that wretched woman who refused to switch seats in the first place. If she had just agreed like she should have, I wouldn't have grabbed her, and my precious grandson would still be alive. She's the one who killed my grandson. I'm calling the police on her. Speak of the devil. The police arrived the very next second. The middle-aged woman seemed to have spotted her savior. She rushed over, grabbed the police officer's hand tightly, and pointed at me, shouting fiercely, "Officer, arrest that wretched woman over there. She's a doctor who treats human life as worthless. She set a fire on the high-speed train, and she killed my precious grandson. Sentence her to death. She deserves to be executed. A slow, torturous death would be best for her." Under the woman's agitated gaze, the police officer produced a pair of handcuffs, but the handcuffs were meant for the old lady. "Why are you arresting me? I'm a law-abiding citizen." "I am," the old lady cried out in shock. "We just reviewed the high-speed rail surveillance footage, and it shows you lit a cigarette and placed it in that woman's bag, which forced the train to make an emergency stop. Your actions have seriously endangered public order and the safety of others' lives. You're coming with us. Move it." The officer barked sternly. "No, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. You've got the wrong person. You bitch. This is all your fault. You bitch. I'll kill you." The woman transformed into a shrieking harpy from the depths, lunging at me with claws bared as if to tear me limb from limb, but she was no match for the police. In a matter of seconds, she was subdued, restrained, and taken into custody to face the full force of the law. I went to the police station to give a statement, and I was completely exhausted, watching the young woman's lonely figure walk away. I wanted to offer comfort but couldn't find the words. In the end, I left quietly and boarded another high-speed train home, I had thought this whole thing would be just a minor episode in my life, and that I'd never have to see that infuriating person again, a woman grinding her teeth in fury. But then, during the New Year celebrations the following year, I found a drunk man lying in the snow on my way back from a late-night snack. "Hey man, are you okay? Wake up." I hurried over and slapped the drunk man's face. It was a snowy night, and the temperature had plummeted to well below -20 degrees Celsius. A light dusting of snow had already settled on him. The next second, he let out a low groan. I thought he was waking up and was about to breathe a sigh of relief, but then he began unconsciously pulling off his clothes with his hands. "Oh no, he's hypothermic. If we don't perform first aid soon, he'll freeze to death in this snowy night. Quick, get him into the car, I'll take him to the hospital." My friend and I managed to lift the drunk man into the car. Just as I was about to get in and turn on the heater, another piece of bad news hit us. The heater seems to be frozen solid, it just won't blow any warm air. It was pitch black outside, everyone had gone home to rest, so there was no one around to help. There were no warm clothes or medicine in the car. Our only option now was to floor it and get him to the hospital as fast as possible. But fate had other plans. On a narrow, unavoidable road to the hospital, a large truck loaded with cabbages was blocking the way. Stuck, I was frantic. I honked the horn several times, but no one came out to move the car. With no other choice, I got out of the car and started shouting into the vicinity, "Whose car is this? Get it out of here now, or someone's going to get killed." I nearly shouted myself hoarse. After what felt like an age, someone finally sauntered out from the side. "What's all the racket? It's the middle of the night. Can't a person get some sleep? Is there no other road you could take?" The person walked into the beam of the headlights. When we saw who it was, both she and I were stunned, our jaws nearly hitting the ground. Wasn't this the same woman who was making a huge, dramatic scene on the high-speed train last year? They say hatred outlasts love, and we recognized each other almost instantly. The sight of me made her seethe with rage. "How dare you show your face, you bitch, you killed my grandson. Drove my daughter-in-law away, and landed me in prison. How dare you appear before my very eyes?" After hearing what she said, I was absolutely furious. She's been to prison and back, yet she still doesn't get it. All of this is a mess of her own making. I don't have time for this nonsense. I've got someone in the back who needs emergency care. Move your car, now, I said urgently. The way, but the old woman just sneered mockingly, as if she couldn't care less about the whole affair. That excuse again. How is it that every time you run into me, someone's on the verge of death? Listen here, if you want to get past me, you'll have to give me back my grandson's life first. Sometimes, you can be so furious that you just burst out laughing. What do you mean, give you back his life? Do you still believe to this day that I'm the one who killed your grandson? What else could it be? You must have recognized it was my grandson and held back, not doing everything you could to save him. Just to get back at me, you probably even sabotaged things on the sly, and finished my grandson off. Otherwise, why would a perfectly healthy boy die the moment he was in your hands? Her sheer obstinacy in arguing really opened my eyes to the wonderful diversity of humanity. Your grandson was never in good health to begin with. He has a congenital heart condition and should have stayed in the hospital for a while. But you people insisted on taking him out. Forget it. I don't want to argue about this anymore. Please, just move your car, will you? There's a person behind my car who is dying. If you don't believe me, come and see for yourself. I opened the door and beckoned the woman over to take a look, but she stood her ground, unmoving, her eyes filled with disdain. "I'm not going over there. For all I know, the moment I step closer, you'll bundle me into a car, kill me, and dump my body. People like you are, rotten to the core." Suddenly, her eyes darted shrewdly, and she continued, "Fine, I'll move the car, but you have to compensate me. That includes the death compensation for my grandson, my lost wages for the year I spent in jail, and the emotional distress. There's also the bride price for my son's new marriage. I'm not asking for much, just 1 million. Give me the money, and I'll leave right now." I was utterly stunned. Even a lion wouldn't have the nerve to ask for that much. You must be out of your mind. I've told you. You brought this all on yourself. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. Now give me the car keys. With that, I lunged forward to snatch her car keys, but she just collapsed onto the ground, letting out a feral scream. "Ah, murder, you goddamn bitch. You killed my grandson and now you want to kill me too. Just picking on a poor old woman. Is that it, isn't it? My life is so cursed. My grandson is gone, my daughter-in-law ran off, and I was even framed and sent to prison for a year. Why is heaven doing this to me? This is so unfair to me. Her shout woke all the sleeping neighbors in the vicinity, and they all came out to watch the commotion. This kind of person is nothing short of a psychic vampire. Even spending a few minutes with her leaves you feeling mentally drained. At that moment, my anxiety and fury were so overwhelming, I was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Just then, my friend in the car suddenly shouted to me, "Get back here, this man is fading fast." I reacted as if facing a grave threat and immediately ran back to the car. I saw that the drunk man's face had turned as white as a sheet, his clothes had been removed at some point, leaving his bare torso exposed. I frantically rubbed his skin with my hands, trying to generate some warmth, all the while whispering words of encouragement in his ear. "Buddy, stay with me. Don't you dare fall asleep. Think of your wife and kids, think of your parents, they're all waiting for you back home." I don't know if it was my words that did it, but his eyelids suddenly twitched, my heart leapt with hope, and I immediately redoubled my efforts, rubbing his skin more vigorously. Suddenly, he mumbled something, his lips moving. I quickly leaned in to listen. "No, don't save me. What are you talking about? There's nothing in this world we can't get through. Snap out of it, we're almost at the hospital." "Open your eyes," I shouted in desperation, rushing forward to pry his eyelids open. Then, in the next instant, a single tear traced a path down from the corner of his eye. "My son is gone, my wife left me, my whole life has been a torment because of my mother, I'm in so much pain, I really can't go on living." I didn't understand what he meant by that, I only knew his voice was growing fainter and fainter. "Hey, wake up, don't fall asleep." No matter how loudly I screamed, it was all in vain. His arm slowly fell, and not a sound or breath remained. I knelt on the back seat, staring in stunned disbelief. Just then, that woman came over again, muttering disdainfully, "Keep up the act. Why don't you? You're no doctor, you're an actor. Let's see if there's really a dead body in your back seat." Confident of her victory, she reached into the back seat and slapped the man across the face, but the next second, she seemed to see something utterly horrifying. Her whole body trembled violently, as if every bone in her body had a motor attached to it. Dodgy, she cried out a name in disbelief. Before I could even process what was happening, she had slumped to the ground, wailing, "Dodgy, how can it be you? Dodgy, my son, wake up, please wake up." Everything happened so suddenly that I was left standing there, frozen and at a complete loss. At this, the neighbors who had gathered to watch the commotion all rushed forward, seeing that the victim was someone they knew. They anxiously shouted at the elderly woman, "Auntie, hurry up and move that car so we can get Dodgy to the hospital." But the old woman was just like last year on the train car, holding her son as if she'd lost her mind, doing nothing but wailing, my son, wake up, you can't leave your mother all alone." Her state had the neighbors so frantic that one of them snatched the keys from her and moved the truck himself. I quickly got in the car and rushed the mother and son to the hospital. "Oh, my son, why is my fate so cruel? Why must there be people trying to harm our family every single day?" The entire way, she kept wailing from the back seat, lamenting the injustice of her fate, yet from the very beginning to the very end, no one ever intended to harm their family. On the contrary, it was I who had been trying everything in my power to save them, yet, she single-handedly managed to thwart it all. They arrived at the hospital quickly, but it was already too late. The man's hypothermia was so severe that there was no chance of saving him. The older woman was wailing her heart out at the entrance to the emergency room. Now, exhausted from crying, she had collapsed in a corner. Then, the young woman arrived. A year had passed, and her face was gaunt and haggard, as if she had aged a decade. She stood at the entrance to the operating room, gazing at the body of the man she once loved. Her thoughts were inscrutable, there were no tears, no expression. As if to mask her own guilt and shame, the older woman grabbed her former daughter-in-law by the hair and began screaming at her, "It's all your fault, you wretched woman. If you hadn't left my son, he wouldn't have been out drinking alone, and he wouldn't have been left outside to freeze to death. I'll kill you." The young woman stood there as if her soul had left her body, motionless and unresisting as the older woman attacked her. I couldn't stand to watch any longer. I rushed forward and desperately pulled them apart, finally unable to contain my own fury as I shouted, "Are you done yet? Last year, you stopped me from saving your grandson, and then you blamed me. This year, you're still stopping me from going to save your son, and you're blaming others again. Have you ever once thought to look at your own actions? You caused all of this, it's all because of you." At my outburst, The woman deflated like a punctured balloon and slumped to the ground. Then she clutched her own hair and wailed, crying as if her heart would break. Exhausted myself, I took one last, deep look at the emergency room before silently walking away. I thought that was the end of it, but to my surprise, a few days later, I was served with a lawyer's letter. In the lawyer's letter, she accused me of causing her son's death through my delay. Perhaps she also knows that a lawsuit filed on these grounds would be dismissed without a doubt, yet she persists. If only to find a psychological crutch, shifting the blame for her own failings onto someone else, so she can ease the pangs of her own conscience. As expected, no matter how she sued, it all ended in failure. Yet, she didn't give up. Somehow, she learned to livestream and began airing her grievances against me in front of a vast online audience. Netizens, unaware of the truth, sympathized with her pitiful plight and swiftly launched a wave of online harassment. But she overlooked one crucial detail again. My car was also equipped with a dashcam. I posted the entire, unedited video of me rescuing the drunk man and then being blocked by that woman on the way to the hospital online. And I also dug up the high-speed train arson case from a year ago that blew up on social media. Public opinion swung hard again, with netizens who once supported her now turning against her. How shameless can you be? How dare you criticize such a kind-hearted doctor? If it weren't for you, your grandson and son could have received fast, professional medical care. You're the one who ruined everything. You're the real murderer who killed them. If I were you, I'd be so ashamed I'd have jumped off a building by now. How do you have the nerve to keep living, let alone come here and smear the doctor's reputations? She was quickly flamed online to the point of getting her account banned, and the courts even refused to hear any of her lawsuits on the matter. After that, I finally had a bit of peace and quiet for a while. I swallowed my anger and looked up to see who it was, a middle-aged woman, with a younger woman holding a baby following behind her. A young woman killed her former mother-in-law with a knife before jumping to her death. I was stunned for a long time after reading this news. Do you ask if I have any regrets? I have no regrets. Healing the sick and saving the dying is my calling. Even if I had to do it all over again, I would exhaust every possible means to attempt a rescue. Yet, I feel a profound sense of injustice and anger for that poor family of 3. They should have had a happy family and a bright future. I hope in their next life, they get everything they deserve. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. See you in the next video.